Long before warm rooms, soft beds, and quiet nights, the human body learned the world through cold ground, thin shelter, hunger, darkness, and distance. That older world is gone for most of us now, yet small traces still seem to remain in the way we sleep, tense, crave warmth, store energy, and feel exposed without knowing why. Perhaps the Ice Age did not disappear from the body all at once. Perhaps it became a memory carried in bone, nerves, fat, and fear. Why humans escaped the Ice Age but their bodies never did. There are moments when the modern body seems strangely out of place in the world that was built to comfort it. A room may be warm, the floor may be flat, the food may be soft, the light may obey a switch on the wall, and still the body does not always become quiet. A shoulder tightens for no clear reason. The lower back grows stiff after sitting, even though sitting is supposed to be rest. The hands feel weak after doing almost nothing with them. The stomach asks for more energy than the day seems to require. Sleep comes late, then breaks easily, as if some small listener inside the nervous system has refused to believe that the night is safe. None of these ordinary feelings prove that we are living inside the past. They are not simple messages from a frozen age, yet they do create a quiet mismatch. The world around us has changed with unusual speed, while the body that enters this world each morning belongs to a much longer story. It did not begin with bedrooms, chairs, ovens, shoes, clocks, screens, or food waiting in bright packages. It began in landscapes where warmth had to be found, where shelter had to be made or chosen, where hunger was not an inconvenience but a condition that shaped attention, movement, memory, and sleep. For most of human existence, the body learned life through ground, wind, distance, darkness, seasons, and the presence of other people close enough to matter. This is why the question of the Ice Age is not only a question about glaciers, snow, mammoths, or ancient tools. It is also a question about why a human body can feel uneasy in comfort. The last Ice Age did not design one single human experience, because people lived in many places, climates, and groups. Some endured open, cold steppe. Some lived near coasts, rivers, forests, caves, or changing grasslands. Some followed animals, gathered plants, made fires, shaped stone, carried infants, shared food, and moved when the land demanded movement. The point is not that every ancient person lived the same hard life. The point is that the human body became itself under conditions far less stable than the rooms we now call normal. Warmth was not guaranteed, calories were not guaranteed, rest was not guaranteed, safety was not guaranteed. Even the ground beneath sleep was not guaranteed to be dry, soft, level, or protected. When we look at the modern body, then, we are not looking at a creature made only for the present. We are looking at an old biological inheritance living inside a new arrangement of walls, fabrics, machines, schedules, and artificial light. A soft bed can support the body, but it cannot rewrite the deep history of muscles that once held posture without chairs. A full kitchen can feed the body, but it cannot instantly erase systems that paid close attention to scarcity. A heated room can cover the skin, but it does not remove the ancient importance of cold from the nerves, blood vessels, and sense of exposure. A quiet house can protect the sleeper, but it does not always silence the older habit of listening. The strange thing is not that modern life is easier in many ways. It clearly is. The strange thing is that ease does not always feel natural to the body receiving it. The body may accept comfort, depend on it, even need it now, while still carrying reactions shaped by a world where comfort was brief, costly, and shared. This is the first doorway into the larger question. Humans escaped the Ice Age through culture, skill, fire, cooperation, shelter, clothing, movement, and eventually through the long historical changes that led to settled life and modern protection. But the body did not leave that older world by simply stepping across a line in time. It carried forward patterns of tension, hunger, warmth-seeking, vigilance, endurance, and dependence on the group. Before we can ask why those patterns remain, we have to sit with the mismatch itself. A modern human body, surrounded by comfort, still behaving as though some part of the cold world has not fully ended. The room is new, but the body inside it is old. The bed is soft, but the sleeper comes from the ground. The night is safe, but the nerves may still remember distance, darkness, and cold. This is where the story begins, not with an answer, but with the feeling that our bodies may have reached the present more slowly than our lives did. The speed of modern comfort can make the human body seem almost confused. A person can cross a room in a few steps and receive warmth from a machine, light from a wire, water from a pipe, food from a refrigerator, and shelter from walls built by people they will never meet. These things feel ordinary because we meet them every day. Yet in the long measure of human history, they arrived late. The body did not grow up with them. It grew up where warmth came from fire, sun, skins, movement, closeness, and the careful choice of place. It grew up where light followed the sky and flame, not a switch. It grew up where food came through searching, carrying, cutting, sharing, waiting, and sometimes failing. The difference between these two worlds is not only a difference in tools, it is a difference in pace. Houses can be built in a season. A family can move from a cold valley to a heated apartment, but the deeper habits of the body do not change at the speed of furniture, clothing, agriculture, industry, or electricity. They change slowly, unevenly, across generations, and often they do not disappear. They become quieter, less visible, or redirected into new places. The body that sits in a chair is still related to bodies that squatted beside fires, rested on uneven ground, stood watch, walked long distances, and rose when weather or hunger required movement. The nervous system under a ceiling is still related to nerves that listen to wind, animals, voices, and the silence of a camp at night. This does not mean modern people are secretly Ice Age people in a simple way. It means the human body carries a history longer than its surroundings. The surroundings can be replaced quickly. The inheritance inside skin, muscle, bone, fat, and nerves is more patient. When the Ice Age world loosened its grip in many regions, humans did not become new animals. They entered changing landscapes with old bodies, old needs, old fears, and old strengths. Warmer climates, shifting animals, forests, rivers, coastlines, and open grasslands offered different possibilities, but the body met them with the same basic design that had survived earlier pressures. Culture moved faster than biology. A shelter could be repaired. A fire could be carried or made again. Clothing could be sewn better. A route could be remembered. A group could learn where herds passed, where roots grew, where stone could be found, and where a cave stayed dry. These cultural solutions allowed humans to cross environments that the bare body alone could not master. Yet every solution also left the body with a double life. The body was protected from cold, but still built to notice cold. It was fed by skill and sharing, but still shaped to respond strongly to uncertainty. It was sheltered by walls and roofs, but still dependent on older cues of closeness, warmth, and sound. A blanket can cover the skin, but it cannot persuade the blood vessels that cold never matters. A clock can divide the day, but it cannot fully replace the older conversation between light, darkness, tiredness, and alertness. A chair can hold the body, but it cannot erase the need for muscles that helped human beings lower themselves to the ground, rise again, carry weight, and balance over rough land. Modern life did not simply free the body from the Ice Age. It placed an ancient body inside a new shelter. The shelter became larger, warmer, brighter, and more predictable. The body became less exposed, but not entirely remade. That is why the mismatch can feel quiet and ordinary. It may appear as restlessness in a safe bed, heaviness after sitting, comfort in firelight, a craving for warmth, a quick reaction to cold air, or a hunger older than the meal in front of us. These experiences do not prove one answer. They point back toward the beginning of the human story, when survival depended on a body able to endure change before it could control change. The modern world is fast enough to cover the old pressures. It may not be old enough to remove the traces they left behind. The first doorway into this story is the feeling of being sheltered and still not fully settled. A person may live far from glaciers, far from open steppe, far from the rough camps where earlier humans watched weather and fire with serious attention. Yet the body does not always behave as if the old world is over. It may ask for warmth even when the room is not truly cold. It may resist stillness even when nothing needs to be done. It may store energy with great seriousness, although food is nearby. It may tighten in the dark, although the door is locked. These are small things, easy to ignore, but they point toward a larger and slower question. When humans escaped the harshest conditions of the Ice Age, what exactly escaped? The mind learned new maps. The hands made better shelters. Groups carried knowledge across generations. Fire, clothing, tools, cooperation, and memory opened paths through difficult landscapes. Much later, farming, houses, storage, roads, heating, medicine, and machines widened that protection even more. In one sense, human beings did escape. They were not frozen in one climate or one way of living. They could move, adapt, invent, gather, hunt, sow, build, cook, and teach. Culture gave the species a speed that flesh alone never had, but the body did not become separate from the history that formed it. It remained a living record of older pressures. The same skin that now feels warm air from a heater still contains systems that narrow blood vessels when cold touches it. The same stomach that receives regular meals still belongs to an animal lineage in which shortage mattered deeply. The same muscles that rest on soft furniture still come from a body plan shaped by walking, lifting, balancing, crouching, carrying, and rising from the ground. The same nervous system that hears the quiet hum of a modern room still has deep roots in a world where sound, darkness, and distance could change the meaning of a night. This does not mean every modern discomfort has one ancient cause. Human bodies are complicated, and modern life brings its own pressures. Sleep can be disturbed by light, worry, noise, illness, age, work, or habit. Hunger can be shaped by food, stress, culture, and many other forces. Pain can come from injury, posture, disease, or repeated use. A careful story should not turn every feeling into a fossil, but it can ask why certain patterns feel so familiar across time. The need for warmth, the need for movement, the need for reliable food, the need for a safe sleeping place, the need for other humans nearby. These needs reach back toward the beginning of the human path, before cities and nations, before written memory, before the world became organized around indoor life. During the long spans when cold climates expanded and retreated, humans were not passive creatures waiting for the weather to end. They learned to live inside uncertainty. They carried babies through hard places. They watched animals and seasons. They used fire not only for heat, but for cooking, light, protection, and gathering. They chose shelters not because shelters were comfortable in the modern sense, but because a small difference in wind, dryness, or exposure could matter. Their bodies were not designed for luxury. They were shaped for survival under changing conditions. That shaping did not vanish when the climate warmed. It was carried forward into every child born after the ice began to withdraw. The world outside the body kept changing, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. But the deep biological inheritance moved at another speed. That is the quiet center of the question. Humans may have escaped the Ice Age by changing their surroundings faster than their bodies could change themselves. They could cover the skin before the skin stopped caring about cold. They could store food before hunger stopped being important. They could sleep under roofs before the nervous system forgot the older meaning of night. They could make life safer without making the body feel permanently safe. So the story does not begin with a claim that we are trapped in the past. It begins with a more delicate possibility. Perhaps the present is built around us, while some older layer inside us is still listening for the world that made us. The Ice Age is easy to imagine as a white world, silent and frozen, with endless snow under a pale sky. That image is not completely false, but it is too small. The colder periods of Earth's recent past were not one single blanket of ice covering every human landscape. They were a long, uneven arrangement of climates, seasons, winds, coastlines, grasslands, deserts, forests, tundra, rivers, and exposed ground. Huge ice sheets held parts of the northern world, but many human groups lived near their edges, far from their edges, or in regions where cold did not always mean permanent snow. Some places were dry and open. Some were windy and treeless. Some offered animals moving across wide plains. Some offered caves, river valleys, coastal resources, scattered wood, roots, fish, birds, and changing herds. The Ice Age was not only a temperature, It was a way the world behaved around the body. It made warmth uncertain, food seasonal, shelter valuable, movement necessary, and memory important. To understand why the body may still carry traces of that older world, the first step is to remove the simple picture of ice and replace it with something more human, a long period in which survival depended on reading an unstable environment with great care. Early humans and their relatives did not begin as creatures surrounded by walls. They began as bodies in weather. Long before written history, before agriculture, before cities, before permanent rooms divided life into inside and outside, the human line had to meet the world directly through skin, feet, hands, eyes, smell, hearing, and group attention. During colder phases, this direct meeting became sharper. A change in wind could matter, a dry overhang could matter, the direction of animal tracks could matter, the distance to fuel could matter, the strength of the group could matter. The body's needs were simple, but meeting them was not simple. Heat, water, food, rest, protection, contact, and a way to continue into the next day. Ice Age life was not only about surviving extreme cold. It was about living in a world where conditions could change before the body was ready. A warmer afternoon could become a dangerous night. A familiar route could become harder after weather shifted. A herd could move away. A plant food could disappear with the season. A fire could fail if fuel was wet or scarce. The human body, in that setting, could not afford to be detached from its surroundings. It had to pay attention, conserve energy, act together, and respond to discomfort before discomfort became danger. This is one reason the Ice Age matters for the modern body. It represents not merely a cold chapter in climate history, but a long training ground for sensitivity. Cold air was information, hunger was information, fatigue was information, darkness was information, pain in the feet, stiffness in the hands, and the need to stay near others were not background feelings. They were part of how a human being stayed alive. The origin of the human story is not a clean line from weakness to mastery. It is a long relationship between a vulnerable body and a difficult world, with culture slowly growing around that vulnerability. Fire, tools, clothing, shared knowledge, and shelter did not erase exposure. They managed it. They made survival possible without making the body independent from nature. The Ice Age also stretched across more time than the mind easily holds. A modern person may think of history in centuries, dynasties, inventions, and buildings. The colder world shaped human life across tens of thousands of years, with many generations born, fed, taught, carried, and buried inside its conditions. No single generation had to understand the entire climate system. They only had to live through their own winters, droughts, migrations, births, injuries, and nights. Yet across those repeated lives, the body and culture met the same kinds of pressures again and again. Warmth had to be protected, food had to be found, children had to be kept alive. Groups had to remember where to go. The land was not scenery. It was the original classroom of the human body. When we say humans escaped the Ice Age, then, we should not picture a door closing behind them. A climate period changed. Landscapes shifted. Ways of living changed. But the body had been educated by a world larger than ice alone, a world of cold, scarcity, distance, uneven ground, fragile warmth, and shared survival. That older education did not simply vanish when the weather became gentler. To live through colder worlds was to live inside a constant conversation with limits. Wind was not just weather. It could take heat from the skin, make fire harder to keep, carry scent away from animals, or turn a familiar resting place into a place that no longer protected the body. Hunger was not only an empty stomach. It could change how far a group dared to move, how much risk a person could take, how carefully scraps were saved, and how closely people watched the land for signs of food. Distance was not only space. It was effort, memory, danger, and time measured through the feet. A place that looked near across open ground could become far when carrying tools, meat, skins, wood, water, or a child. In such a world, survival did not depend on one heroic strength. It depended on thousands of small adjustments repeated over many lives. A group might wait for the right season, follow animals when they moved, return to a river valley, shelter near rock, repair clothing, share heat, divide food, remember where stone was useful, and notice when a landscape had changed. The Ice Age pressed on human beings through ordinary details. A night could become too cold, a fire could burn down too low, a path could become exposed, a body could become tired before the group reached safety. A child could need warmth when adults had little energy left. These pressures did not require the whole world to be covered in ice. They only required life to be uncertain enough that the body had to stay alert to cold, hunger, movement, and belonging. Near the beginning of the human path, before there were fields, streets, or stored grain, the body was already learning that survival was rarely a private matter. One person could not easily be warm, fed, protected, and rested alone for long. The body's needs pulled humans toward one another. Fire was more useful when guarded and shared. Food lasted longer when divided with memory and trust. Children survived better when care did not depend on one exhausted adult. Knowledge became safer when held by more than one mind. Even the simple act of sleeping was shaped by the group, because a body lying down in darkness is always more vulnerable than a body standing in daylight. Ice Age life, then, was not only a struggle against climate, it was a long education in dependence. The human body learned cold through skin, but it learned safety through other humans. It learned hunger through the stomach, but it learned endurance through cooperation. It learned distance through feet and knees, but it learned roots through memory passed from older people to younger ones. A modern room can hide these older relationships because the walls perform some of the work the group once performed. Heating protects warmth. Refrigeration protects food. Beds protect rest. Doors protect sleep. Roads protect movement. Yet the body's deeper expectations may still lean toward the old arrangement, where comfort was not separated from people, place, effort, and time. The seasons of colder periods also taught the body that life was not evenly distributed. Some days may have offered meat, marrow, fish, eggs, plants, or gathered foods. Other days may have required waiting, walking, chewing less desirable foods, or using stored knowledge rather than immediate abundance. This unevenness matters because the body did not evolve in a world where every meal appeared at the same hour and every night offered the same temperature. It learned rhythm from change. It learned to respond to scarcity before scarcity became fatal. It learned to value fat, warmth, salt, rest, and closeness, because these were not always easy to find. When modern people feel pulled toward warmth, heavy food, soft rest, or the presence of others, it may be useful to remember that these are not simply signs of weakness. They may be echoes of a body shaped in a world where those things had deep survival meaning. The Ice Age did not need to leave a clear memory in the conscious mind. It could leave a quieter memory in how the body reacts before thought arrives. The tightening before cold, the unease in darkness, the seriousness of hunger, the relief of shelter, the comfort of another human nearby. Humans eventually built ways to soften these pressures, but the body first met them directly, in wind, hunger, distance, changing seasons, long nights, and places where shelter was never taken for granted. A body shaped by unstable conditions does not only learn how to survive danger, it also learns how to expect interruption. Warmth may be present, but it may not last. Food may be found, but it may not return tomorrow. A resting place may feel safe, but a change in weather, smoke, noise, or movement could disturb it. This was not a dramatic exception in the older human world. It was part of the ordinary background of life. For people living through colder and more variable climates, comfort was not a permanent setting. It was a temporary achievement, made again and again through effort, memory, skill, and cooperation. A fire had to be fed. A shelter had to be chosen or repaired. Clothing had to be made from available materials and kept useful. Food had to be found within the limits of season, place, and luck. The body did not grow under a steady promise that temperature, calories, rest, and safety would remain stable. It grew under conditions where stability was something humans created in small pockets. This matters because the modern world often treats comfort as the natural starting point. A warm room is expected. A dry bed is expected. A meal is expected. Light at night is expected. But near the beginning of the human story, these things were not the ground of life. They were achievements against the ground of life. The body that now receives comfort may still carry systems shaped in a world where comfort had to be earned, protected, and shared. A person today can feel cold and immediately search for heat, but the reaction itself is older than the heater. A person can feel hungry and open a kitchen, but the seriousness of hunger reaches back to a time when food was uncertain and attention to food had survival value. A person can lie down under a roof and still take time to settle, because sleep was once connected to exposure, group safety, fire, and darkness. These reactions are not mistakes in a simple sense. They are older forms of attention that now live inside a different arrangement of life. In a continuously comfortable world, they may seem excessive. In an unstable world, they made sense. The Ice Age was not a single lesson written on the body. It was many repeated lessons across landscapes and generations. Move when the land no longer gives enough. Stay close when darkness deepens. Save energy when food becomes uncertain. Seek warmth before cold becomes dangerous. Notice the condition of the feet, because distance is never only distance. Notice the mood of the group, because no body survives well for long without others. These are not conscious rules written in language. They are patterns that can become embedded in behavior, culture, development, and bodily response. The human origin point is not a perfect wild past, and it should not be imagined as pure strength or pure suffering. It was a long negotiation between weakness and invention. Humans were vulnerable to cold, yet they made fire and clothing. They were vulnerable to hunger, yet they learned landscapes and shared food. They were vulnerable in sleep, yet they gathered near one another. They were vulnerable over distance, yet they became walkers, carriers, trackers, and rememberers. The body was trained not by comfort alone, but by the need to make comfort possible in a world that did not provide it automatically. This is why modern comfort can feel both deeply welcome and strangely incomplete. It answers many old pressures from the outside, but it does not always quiet the body from the inside. A chair reduces effort, yet the back may miss movement. A soft bed reduces hardness, yet sleep may still depend on rhythm, darkness, and safety. A full meal removes immediate hunger, yet the body may still respond strongly to energy-rich food. A warm room removes cold exposure, yet the skin and nerves still know how quickly cold can matter. The modern environment is built to prevent instability, but the human body was shaped through repeated contact with instability. It learned to live before the world became predictable. So when humans escaped the Ice Age, they did not escape as blank creatures ready to be rewritten by comfort. They carried a body educated by uncertainty into a world that would slowly become more controlled. The old pressures became less constant, but the deep readiness remained. Readiness for cold, readiness for hunger, readiness for distance, readiness for danger, readiness for the group. The Ice Age may have ended around the body, but the body still carries the habits of a creature that learned life where nothing essential was guaranteed. Cold is one of the oldest languages the body can understand. It does not need words, tools, maps, or memory in the ordinary sense. It touches the skin, and the skin answers before thought has time to explain anything. A person steps into winter air, and the shoulders rise. Fingers draw inward. The jaw tightens. The body makes itself smaller, not because anyone has decided to do so, but because cold has reached a system older than decision. Blood vessels near the surface narrow to hold warmth deeper inside. Tiny muscles under the skin may lift hair that no longer protects us in the way fur protects other mammals. If cold continues, larger muscles begin to tremble, turning movement into heat. These responses can feel simple, even annoying, inside modern life. A cold room, a windy morning, a blanket slipping from the body at night, but behind them is a deep history of exposure. Long before people built houses with closed windows, thick walls, and controlled heat, the human body already had to solve the first problem of cold from the inside. Fire, clothing, shelter, and shared sleeping places helped greatly, but they came after the body's first contact with the air. The skin was the border. The blood was the messenger. The muscles were the emergency tool. This is where the Ice Age becomes intimate. It is not only a climate event far away in time. It is also a pressure that once met the body directly, again and again, across ordinary mornings and dangerous nights. Early humans did not experience cold as a number on a screen. They experienced it as pain in the fingers, stiffness in the joints, slower hands, shorter patience, a need to move, a need to find others, a need to guard the fire. The origin of the human story is tied to this physical honesty. Before there was comfort, the body had to know when warmth was leaving. Cold made the outside world impossible to ignore. A rock shelter could reduce wind, but the body still knew the wind. Animal skins could hold heat, but the body still knew what it meant to lose heat. Fire could warm a circle of ground, but a person turning away from it could feel how narrow that circle was. The Ice Age did not have to freeze every landscape solid to leave a mark. It only had to make warmth uncertain enough that the body took cold seriously. In that kind of world, the sensation of cold was not a small discomfort. It was an early warning. It told the group when to move closer, when to repair coverings, when to seek fuel, when a child needed attention, when rest could become unsafe. Modern life often separates sensation from consequence. A cold hand may simply mean reaching for a sleeve. A cold bedroom may mean adjusting a thermostat. But the reaction itself comes from a body shaped before such easy corrections existed. This does not mean the body remembers the Ice Age like a mind remembers an event. It means that the systems we still carry were useful in worlds where temperature could decide whether energy was saved or lost, whether sleep restored or drained, whether a weak person recovered or declined. Human fat also belongs to this older conversation, though it should not be reduced to one simple story. Fat stores energy, cushions, participates in hormones, and helps the body in many ways. In cold environments, the storage and management of energy could matter deeply because making heat is costly. A body that must stay warm while moving, searching, carrying, and sleeping under rough shelter spends energy even when it appears still. Near the beginning of human life in cold and changing climates, warmth was never separate from food. To be cold for too long was also to burn through the body's reserves. To be hungry was to have less fuel for heat. To be tired was to have less strength to gather wood, walk to shelter, or remain alert in darkness. This is why cold cannot be understood only as temperature. It links skin, blood, muscles, fat, hunger, sleep, and social closeness into one quiet chain. When a modern person feels relief under a blanket, comfort near a fire, or unease in a cold room, those feelings sit on top of very old biology. We have escaped many of the hardest exposures through houses, clothing, heating, and culture. Yet the skin still listens, the blood still withdraws, the muscles still tremble. The body still treats cold as something meaningful, because for a very long time it was. The human body did not defeat cold by becoming untouched by it. It survived because cold forced the body and culture to work together. This is one of the quiet truths hidden behind every ancient fire. A flame was not only a useful invention, it was a small climate made by human hands, a circle of warmth carried into a world that often gave no warmth freely. Around fire, skin could recover, fingers could loosen, meat could soften, darkness could be pushed back a little. People could gather close enough for heat, speech, watchfulness, and memory to become one shared shelter. But fire also reveals the limits of the body. A creature that truly belonged to the cold would not need flame so deeply. Humans needed it because the body was powerful, adaptable, and vulnerable at the same time. That mixture may be one of the clearest marks of our beginning. We were not animals with thick fur, heavy seasonal coats, or bodies perfectly made for ice. We were bodies that answered cold with shivering, blood flow, stored energy, movement, and social closeness. Then extended those answers with tools. A stone tool could cut hide. A hide could hold warmth. A needle, much later in human history, could help shape coverings more closely to the body. A shelter could break the wind. A cave entrance, a rock wall, a hollow, a brush screen, or a carefully chosen camp could change the meaning of a night. Each layer mattered, because none of them erased exposure completely. They only reduced it enough for life to continue. This is why the Ice Age should not be imagined as a simple contest between humans and cold. It was a long partnership between biology and invention, held together by need. The body felt the cold first. The hand answered with work. The group answered with knowledge. The fire answered with heat. The place itself answered if it had stone, wood, bone, grass, hide, or sheltering ground. Archaeological traces often speak in fragments. Burned areas that suggest controlled fire, stone tools shaped by repeated blows, animal bones with cut marks, signs of camps, worked materials, and later evidence of clothing technologies in some regions. None of these traces give a complete picture of one night. They do not let us know exactly what one person felt while sitting near a fire in the wind, but they do show something steady. Humans survived cold environments not by leaving the body behind, but by building support around it. The origin of human life in harsh climates was never just inside the skin. It was in the relationship between skin and flame, hand and tool, child and group, memory and landscape. Cold made this relationship visible. A bare body could not simply command winter to soften. It had to borrow warmth from burning wood, from animal coverings, from other bodies, from the shape of the land, from the timing of movement, and from inherited knowledge. In a modern room, this older arrangement is easy to forget because the support has become hidden inside walls, wires, fabric, fuel systems, and machines. Heat arrives without a gathered branch. Clothing comes without the animal, the scraping, the stitching, or the long learning behind it. A bed holds warmth without the old search for a dry place. Yet the body receiving these comforts still belongs to the same deep pattern. It does not create safety alone. It depends on layers outside itself. The heater is a descendant of the fire circle in a broad cultural sense, not because the technologies are the same, but because both answer the same old vulnerability. The coat, the blanket, the house, the insulated wall, the warm drink, and the cooked meal all continue an ancient conversation between cold and the human need to soften it. What changed was the scale and reliability of the answers. What did not fully change was the body's sensitivity to the question. This may be why warmth feels so emotionally deep, not merely pleasant. A fire in a dark room, a blanket over tired legs, a warm bowl held in the hands, sunlight on the skin after cold air. These comforts touch more than comfort. They touch the old border where survival once depended on staying close to heat. To say humans escaped the Ice Age is true in one sense. They escaped many of its direct pressures by making better shelters, better clothing, better fires, better food practices, and better ways to pass knowledge forward. But the very tools that help them escape also remind us that the body never stopped being the kind of body that needed protection. Cold did not disappear from biology. It became something culture learned to hold back. When a cave, a rock wall, a hide covering, or a fire circle protected an ancient body from cold, the body did not forget cold. It simply survived long enough to continue. This distinction is quiet but important. Protection is not the same as erasure. A shelter can interrupt the wind, but it does not remove the body's need to defend its warmth. Clothing can hold heat near the skin, but it does not make the skin indifferent. Fire can soften a night, but it also teaches the body that warmth is something gathered, guarded, and lost if attention fails. Much later, houses would make this protection far more powerful. Walls grew thicker, roofs became more reliable, rooms became separate from weather. Heating made warmth appear without wood smoke, without sparks, without the careful tending of flame. Yet even inside such protection, the body still reacts as an old border between inner heat and outer world. A cold draft across the feet can disturb sleep. A drop in temperature can make muscles tighten. A person may pull a blanket closer not because life is in danger, but because the body treats warmth as meaningful before the mind measures the risk. In this way, modern shelter may hide the Ice Age more than it removes it. The cold no longer rules every night, but the body still contains the systems that once had to answer it. Near the beginning of the human path, shelter was not a background object. It was a decision with consequences. A dry place mattered. A place out of the wind mattered. A place where smoke could move without choking the group mattered. A place close enough to fuel, water, animals, stone, or plants mattered. A place that helped protect infants. The tired, the injured, and the old mattered. The human body did not meet cold alone, but it also never became free from the need to notice place. This may be one reason many people still feel the atmosphere of a room in the body before they think about it clearly. A damp room feels different from a dry one. A low ceiling feels different from an open space. A corner feels different from a doorway. Warm light feels different from cold light. These reactions should not be turned into simple ancient memories, because modern experience, personal history, and culture also shape them. But they do show how deeply the body reads shelter. The body is not only asking, is there a roof? It may also be asking, in older ways, is this place warm enough, protected enough, quiet enough, shared enough, safe enough to let go? The Ice Age question returns here with a softer edge. Humans escaped many cold landscapes by building layers between themselves and exposure, but every layer was built around the same kind of body. The house did not replace the skin. The bed did not replace the nervous system. The blanket did not replace the old need for warmth. The door did not replace the older search for a safe edge between inside and outside. Modern comfort can make us think the body should be satisfied as soon as the environment is controlled, but biology is not a machine that instantly updates its meaning of safety. It is shaped by repeated experience across time, by development, by habit, and by inheritances deeper than one lifetime. When warmth becomes easy, the body still treats it as a condition worth preserving. When cold becomes rare, the body still reacts quickly when it appears. When shelter becomes normal, the body may still depend on small signs of protection to settle into rest. This does not mean the body failed to leave the past. It means the past was never only outside the body. It entered through skin, breath, hunger, sleep, muscle, and the need to be near others. A heated room is a recent answer to an ancient question. A blanket is a soft answer to a hard question. A house is a large answer to wind, night, rain, cold, and uncertainty. But the question itself remains older than the answer. The body accepts modern shelter, yet it still belongs to a lineage that learned shelter as a fragile human achievement. So when the cold is kept outside the walls, perhaps the Ice Age has not vanished from the body. Perhaps it has only become quieter, waiting at the edge of sensation, where a small chill can still remind us that warmth was once never guaranteed. Hunger is one of the oldest pressures a body can feel, and it does not arrive only when the stomach is empty. It changes attention. It sharpens the meaning of smell, movement, memory, and distance. In a modern kitchen, hunger may be answered almost immediately, with food already gathered, stored, cooled, cooked, wrapped, delivered, or waiting behind a door. But for most of the human story, food was not a background promise. It was a search, a risk, a season, a memory, a shared task, and sometimes a failure. During colder and changing climates, this uncertainty could become even more serious. Plants followed seasons, animals moved, rivers froze or shifted. Weather changed the availability of roots, berries, eggs, fish, shellfish, game, and fuel for cooking. A group could not simply decide that every day would contain the same meal. Some days may have brought meat, marrow, fat, gathered foods, or stored knowledge that made the body feel secure for a while. Other days may have brought less. The archaeological record can show bones, tools, hearths, residues, cut marks, and patterns of settlement, but it cannot give us every meal, every hunger, or every quiet decision around a fire. What it does suggest is enough. Ancient food was uneven. That unevenness matters because the body did not begin inside a world of stable abundance. Near the beginning of human life, before fields and granaries, the body had to treat energy as something valuable, because energy was the difference between warmth and cold, movement and stillness, recovery and weakness. In an Ice Age landscape, food was never separate from temperature. To stay warm required fuel inside the body as well as fire outside it. To walk over open ground required fuel. To carry a child, drag wood, process hides, shape stone, butcher an animal, dig, climb, or keep watch through a long night required fuel. Hunger was not only discomfort. It could reduce patience, strength, warmth, and judgment. This is why the human body learned to take food seriously long before food became easy to obtain. The craving for energy-dense food, the relief of warmth after eating, the desire to rest after a meal, and the anxiety that can follow uncertain food are not strange when seen against deep time. They belong to a body shaped in conditions where calories were not evenly spaced across a day, a week, or a season. This does not mean every ancient human was always starving. That would be too simple and not truthful. Some places and seasons could be rich. Skilled groups knew their landscapes deeply. Coastal areas, rivers, migrating herds, plant cycles, stored fat, preserved foods in some contexts, and cooperation could all reduce uncertainty. But abundance was not the same as the modern expectation that food will appear again whenever the body asks. A successful hunt could feed people for a time, yet it could not make the future permanent. A good season could fill the body, yet another season could narrow choices. The origin of human eating was therefore not only about taste. It was about timing, sharing, risk, and memory. Food had to be found, processed, divided, protected, and carried. Children, pregnant people, injured people, older people, and those with less strength depended on the group's ability to turn scattered resources into continued life. In that world, the body that paid close attention to hunger was not being excessive. It was listening to a pressure that could shape survival. Modern life has changed the outside of this pressure more than the inside of it. Shelves can stay full, meals can be scheduled. Sweetness, fat, salt and softness can be made constant in ways no Ice Age landscape provided. Yet the body receiving modern food still carries older systems for seeking energy, saving energy and responding to shortage. The mismatch is quiet but powerful. A body built to notice scarcity may live inside abundance. A body once trained by seasonal uncertainty may meet food engineered for immediate reward. Humans escaped many ancient hungers through culture, storage, farming, trade, cooking, and technology. But the body did not stop being a body that learned food as something precious, uncertain, and tied to warmth itself. A body that lives with uncertain food must learn more than how to eat. It must learn how to wait. It must learn how to move when energy is low, how to rest without becoming helpless, how to notice signs of food before hunger becomes too deep, and how to protect stored strength inside flesh. In the colder worlds where many humans lived for long stretches, this lesson could be severe. A full stomach did not mean the next day would be full. A successful hunt did not mean the next season would be generous. A patch of edible plants, a river with fish, a shoreline with shellfish, or a carcass shared by a group could matter greatly, but none of them turned the land into a permanent kitchen. The body had to live between enough and not enough. That space between abundance and scarcity may be one of the oldest classrooms of human biology. When energy came in, the body had reasons to use it carefully, store some of it, repair what it could, warm itself, and prepare for movement. When energy did not come in, the body had reasons to become cautious. Hunger could make attention narrow. It could make smells stronger, memories of places sharper, and the sight of food more powerful. Modern people often experience this as inconvenience, craving, impatience, or fatigue, but in the deep past, these reactions belonged to the practical work of staying alive. They were not moral failures. They were old signals in a body that could not assume the world would provide again on schedule. The origin of human eating sits inside that uncertainty. Before agriculture, before granaries, before markets, before regular mealtimes, food was tied to landscape knowledge and group life. A person did not simply feed a private body. Food moved through relationships. It was found by some, carried by others, processed with tools, cooked with fuel, divided by custom, given to children, offered to the weak, and remembered by the old. The body's hunger was personal, but the answer to hunger was social. In Ice Age settings, this connection may have become even more important, because energy was linked to warmth, and warmth was linked to survival through cold nights, long walks, and hard seasons. A body that saved energy was not lazy in the older world. A body that valued fat and rich food was not confused. A body that rested after effort was not broken. These responses made sense where food, heat, and movement formed one chain. The same chain still passes quietly through modern life, even though the outside world has changed. A person may eat in a heated room, sitting still, far from the wind and distance that once made calories precious. Yet the body can still treat dense food with deep interest, because sweetness, fat, and salt once came with meaning. They could signal ripe fruit, marrow, meat, blood, milk, preserved foods, minerals, or energy difficult to replace. Modern food can concentrate these signals in forms much stronger and more constant than ancient landscapes usually offered. That does not make the body foolish. It shows how an old system can meet a new environment and become mismatched. The body is still listening for scarcity, even when abundance surrounds it. It may still store energy carefully, even when the next meal is near. It may still push the mind toward food when tired, cold, stressed, or sleepless, because in older conditions those states were tied to survival risk. A careful story should not claim that every modern appetite comes from the Ice Age. Appetite is shaped by biology, culture, habit, memory, stress, health, and the food environment around us. But the deeper pattern remains clear enough to consider. Human bodies did not evolve in a world where energy was cheap, constant, and effortless. They evolved through long periods where energy had to be found, protected, shared, and sometimes endured in its absence. Humans escaped many ancient shortages by inventing storage, cooking, farming, trade, and industrial food systems. Yet the body still carries an older seriousness around hunger. It still behaves as though energy matters, because for most of the human journey, it did. The modern world has solved many of the food problems that followed humans through cold climates, but it has not necessarily solved them in the language the body understands. A supermarket can contain more calories than entire ancient landscapes could provide in a single day. Food can travel across oceans, survive seasons, arrive by vehicle, and remain available even when weather outside is unpleasant. Yet the body standing in front of this abundance is still built from generations that experienced something very different. For much of human history, hunger was not a rare interruption to comfort. It was part of the rhythm of life. Meals were not guaranteed by clocks. Energy did not arrive according to schedule. The land could be generous, but it could also become silent. A hunting route could fail. A season could arrive late. A familiar food source could disappear for a time. Human groups learned remarkable ways to adapt, but adaptation never removed uncertainty completely. The body that emerged from this long history was not designed around permanent abundance. It was designed around responsiveness. It learned to notice opportunity. It learned to value energy when energy appeared. It learned to avoid wasting what might soon be difficult to replace. This creates an interesting possibility when we look at modern life. Humans may have escaped the food uncertainty of the Ice Age through agriculture, storage, trade, technology, and industrial systems, but the body did not suddenly become a creature that ignores scarcity. It still reacts strongly to signals that once carried survival value. A sweet taste can feel meaningful. Warm food can feel deeply satisfying. Fat-rich foods can feel comforting. Eating after effort can feel rewarding. These reactions are not strange when viewed through deep time. They belong to a body that spent far longer dealing with uncertainty than abundance. The mismatch becomes easier to see when we remember how recently many modern food conditions appeared. Reliable storage, refrigeration, large-scale transport, year-round access to many foods, and the ability to purchase calories without directly gathering or producing them are extremely new compared with the immense span of human existence. The body had already completed most of its long biological journey before these changes arrived. Near the beginning of that journey, a person could not separate food from movement. Calories often required walking, searching, digging, climbing, carrying, tracking, gathering, preparing, or sharing. Hunger and effort were connected. Warmth and effort were connected. Survival and effort were connected. Today, energy can often arrive without physical effort, but the body itself still comes from that older relationship. This does not mean modern people are somehow living incorrectly. It means the environment changed faster than many of the deeper patterns that helped humans survive within it. The same theme has appeared before in our story. Warm houses answered cold. Safe rooms answered exposure. Stored food answered scarcity. But the body was not rebuilt from the beginning each time culture created a new solution. Instead, old biological systems continued forward into new circumstances. The result is not failure. It is continuity. The body still behaves like the descendant of creatures that took food seriously because food mattered. The body still behaves like the descendant of creatures that stored energy because future conditions could not be predicted. The body still behaves like the descendant of creatures that experienced hunger as information rather than as an unusual event. The origin of the human story remains visible here. Long before cities, long before markets, long before shelves filled with food, the body was learning lessons from landscapes shaped by season, climate, distance, and uncertainty. Those lessons became part of the foundation carried into later generations. The world changed around them, but the foundation remained. This is why the question of the Ice Age reaches beyond glaciers and ancient weather. It reaches into ordinary experiences that seem modern, craving warmth, seeking comfort, feeling relief after eating, paying attention to hunger, protecting energy when tired. These may not be direct memories of ancient conditions, but they exist within systems shaped by those conditions. Humans escaped many of the hardest pressures of Ice Age food uncertainty. They built ways to make tomorrow more predictable than it had ever been before. Yet the body still approaches energy with the caution and seriousness of a creature whose ancestors lived through countless days when tomorrow's meal had not yet been found. The land became more manageable, food became more reliable, but the body remained the body of a species that learned survival in a world where certainty was rare. Sleep looks peaceful from the outside, but in the older human world, sleep was one of the most vulnerable things a body could do. To sleep is to lower the body, loosen the muscles, close the eyes, soften attention, and surrender part of the night to trust. In a modern bedroom, this surrender can seem ordinary. A door is locked, a roof is overhead. The floor is dry, the bed is raised, soft, and separated from the ground. Light can be removed or brought back with a switch. The temperature can be adjusted. Yet the body does not always enter sleep as easily as the room invites it to. Some nights the mind stays alert without a clear reason. A small sound becomes larger than it should be. A cold foot pulls the whole body back toward waking. A person may feel tired but not safe enough to fall deeply into rest. These experiences belong to modern life, but they also point backward toward a much older meaning of sleep. For most of the human story, sleep was never only recovery. It was a negotiation with exposure. A sleeping body cannot walk away quickly. It cannot scan the horizon. It cannot guard food, protect fire, or respond to cold as well as a waking body. This does not mean ancient humans lived in constant terror at night. That would be too simple. Human groups had fire, shelter, knowledge, habits, and each other. But it does mean sleep had to be made possible. It depended on place, warmth, group closeness, weather, darkness, fatigue, and trust. Near the beginning of the human path, before houses and bedrooms, sleep happened in relation to land. A dry patch of ground mattered. A rock wall could matter. A cave mouth could matter. The direction of the wind mattered. The distance to water, fuel, animals, and other people mattered. A fire could change the night, but it had to be maintained. Smoke could protect or disturb. Warmth could gather around bodies, then fade as the fire lowered. A child could wake. An older person could need help. Someone injured or weak could be more exposed to cold. In that world, sleep was not a private service delivered by a room. It was a shared condition created by the group and the environment together. The body learned rest inside that arrangement. It learned that sleep depended on more than tiredness. It depended on whether the place allowed the body to let go. This is one reason the Ice Age reaches deeply into the question of sleep. Cold climates and unstable landscapes did not simply make waking life harder. They changed what it meant to lie down. A long night was not empty time. It was a test of warmth, shelter, social closeness, and bodily trust. The ground could draw heat away. Wind could find openings. Rain, snow, dampness, or smoke could disturb rest. Hunger could make sleep lighter. Fear of losing warmth, losing fire, or losing contact with the group may not have needed clear thoughts. It could live as a bodily readiness, a reluctance to fully disappear into sleep when conditions were uncertain. Modern sleep problems have many causes, and it would be careless to explain them all through ancient history. Light at night, stress, Pain, age, illness, work schedules, noise, and habits can all shape sleep, but the deeper point remains. The human body did not evolve sleep in a world where safety was automatic. It evolved sleep as a fragile act made possible by fire, rhythm, shelter, and other humans. When we lie down today, the room may be modern, but the sleeping body is not a modern invention. It carries old requirements into a new bed. It may still need darkness that feels natural, warmth that feels steady, quiet that does not feel empty, and a sense that the body is not alone against the night. Humans escaped the Ice Age by building safer places to sleep, but the body may still remember that sleep was once a form of trust placed carefully on the ground. Sleep in the older human world was rarely a private event. It belonged to the group, to the fire, to the chosen ground, and to the rhythm of people who shared danger as well as warmth. A modern person can close a door and imagine sleep as something that happens alone, inside a separate room, inside a separate bed. But for much of human history, a sleeping body was held within a social field. Other breathing bodies were near. Someone might wake before another. Someone might hear a sound, tend a fire, comfort a child, shift closer against cold, or notice when the weather changed. The exact patterns of ancient sleep were not the same everywhere, and we should be careful not to invent one simple scene for all human groups. Yet the broader principle is reasonable. Sleep became safer when it was shared, sheltered, warmed, and placed within collective attention. In Ice Age landscapes, this would have mattered even more. Cold nights, uncertain shelter, and long darkness made sleep dependent on more than tiredness. A body could be exhausted and still not fully safe. A person could lie down and still need the quiet assurance of nearby people, controlled flame, covered skin, and a place that did not steal too much heat from the body. This takes us back toward the beginning of human life, where survival was not built on isolation. The human infant is helpless for a long time. The injured body needs others. The cold body benefits from closeness. The frightened body settles more easily when it senses a group. Before formal houses, before bedrooms, before the idea of private sleep became normal in many modern societies, human rest was woven into social survival. Fire sits at the center of this image, not as a dramatic symbol, but as a practical companion to sleep. A fire could warm the air, discourage some animals, give light, dry materials, cook food, and gather people into a shared circle. But fire was also fragile. It needed fuel. It needed attention. It could fade. It could smoke. It could burn too high or too low. Around it, people did not simply sleep like stones. The night may have had layers of waking and resting, older people and younger people, nursing infants, quiet listening, bodies turning toward warmth, and the slow changes of flame. This does not mean every night was fearful. It means rest was active in its conditions. It had to be supported. The sleeping body trusted the group because the group extended the body's limits. One person could not listen deeply while sleeping, but a group could make total vulnerability less complete. One person could not stay warm easily in all conditions, but bodies near one another could share warmth. One person could forget a route or a danger, but a group carried memory across minds. When modern people feel comfort from another presence in the house, from a dim light, from familiar sounds, from a warm blanket, or from the soft rhythm of breathing nearby, these comforts may touch that older arrangement. They do not prove a direct Ice Age memory. They show that the human body developed sleep inside relationships, not only inside darkness. The modern bedroom has replaced many ancient supports with objects and systems. The mattress replaces much of the ground. The wall replaces the windbreak. Heating replaces part of the fire. Locks replace part of the watchful group. Electric light replaces flame. But the nervous system may still ask for cues that are older than these inventions. Is the place safe enough? Is warmth steady enough? Is the body alone? Is the night predictable? Is there a familiar rhythm nearby? This is where the question of escape becomes delicate. Humans built stronger answers to the problem of sleeping exposed. They learned to roof the night, soften the ground, store warmth, and separate rest from weather. Yet the body did not stop being the kind of body that once needed social safety to sleep well. The Ice Age may have ended outside the shelter, but the sleeper still carries a nervous system shaped by nights when rest depended on firelight, closeness, and the quiet protection of others. A safe bedroom can still fail to feel completely safe to the body. This is one of the quiet mismatches that makes modern sleep so strange. The room may have a roof, a lock, a mattress, a blanket, and steady walls. There may be no real danger nearby, yet the nervous system can remain lightly awake, listening to the house, noticing a small sound, following a thought, waiting for something it cannot name. The body may be tired, but tiredness alone does not always open the door to sleep. Something older seems to ask for more than exhaustion. It asks for warmth, darkness that feels natural, a familiar place, a steady rhythm, and sometimes the simple knowledge that another human being is near. In modern life, this can feel irrational. Why should the body hesitate when the room is safe? But if we return to the older human world, the question becomes softer. For much of human history, sleep was not guaranteed by architecture. It was earned by conditions. A place could be sheltered, but still cold. A fire could be present, but still fading. A group could be nearby, but still tired. The ground could be dry tonight and damp tomorrow. The night could be quiet, but not empty. The body learned that rest depended on the whole situation, not only on the desire to sleep. This older pattern may still shape the way sleep feels now, even when the visible dangers have changed. Near the beginning of human life, a sleeping body belonged to a landscape. The land did not disappear at sunset. It grew less visible and perhaps more difficult to read. Cold could deepen after dark. Wind could shift. Animals could move. Smoke could settle. Hunger could make the night lighter. Pain from walking, carrying, or crouching could follow the body into rest. A child might stir and need warmth. An older person might wake more often. Someone might listen while others slept. The group, the fire, and the shelter formed a fragile circle around the sleeping body. In that circle, safety was not a single object. It was a relationship. It came from people, place, heat, memory, and timing. Modern sleep often removes us from that circle and replaces it with private comfort. This has great advantages. It protects the body from many old pressures, but it may also create a strange silence around sleep. A person lies alone in a room that is physically safe, yet the body may not receive all the old signals of safety that once came from group closeness, low firelight, shared breathing, natural darkness, and the slow fading of a day spent moving through the world. Electric light can extend the evening, but it can also confuse the older rhythm between darkness and rest. Soft beds can reduce pressure from the ground, but they cannot create the social meaning that sleep once carried. Quiet walls can remove danger, but they can also make small sounds seem larger. The body may be protected, yet still searching for cues that belong to a much older sleeping environment. This does not mean we should romanticize ancient nights. They could be cold, painful, interrupted, and dangerous. Modern shelter is a real human achievement, but the body's sleep systems did not evolve only for comfort. They evolved for timing, vigilance, recovery, warmth, and belonging. Humans escaped the Ice Age partly by making better places to sleep. They brought the night under roofs, softened the ground, controlled temperature, and separated rest from weather more than ever before. Still, the sleeper inside the bed remains an ancient animal in one important sense. It does not simply shut down because the clock says it is time. It listens for the conditions under which letting go feels possible. When those conditions are missing, even slightly, the body may remain at the edge of waking. So the modern bedroom becomes another place where the old question returns. We escape the open cold, the exposed ground, and the long, uncertain night. But some part of the sleeping body may still behave as if rest is not just a personal choice. It is a trust placed in the world around us. The human body was not shaped for stillness first. It was shaped through movement before stillness became easy. Long before most people sat for hours on chairs, travelled without walking, or worked with only the small motions of fingers and eyes, the body met the world through distance. Feet felt the ground before roads made ground simple. Ankles adjusted to stones, slopes, mud, roots, ice, sand, and uneven earth. Knees bent not only for exercise but for gathering, lifting, resting, climbing, lowering the body near a fire, and rising again. Hips carried weight, the spine balanced ahead looking across land. Shoulders, hands, and back joined the work of carrying tools, children, fuel, food, hides, water, and memory from one place to another. In the older human world, movement was not separate from life. It was the way life continued. To find food, one moved. To avoid cold, one moved toward shelter or fuel. To follow animals, one moved. To reach water, stone, wood, or safer ground, one moved. In colder and changing climates, this relationship between body and distance became even more important. A group could not remain forever in one place if the land no longer gave enough. The body therefore had to endure, not in a dramatic sense, but in a daily one. It had to walk, pause, carry, crouch, climb, bend, and recover. The origin of human strength was not the strength of a machine. It was the strength of a body woven into terrain. Modern life often hides this origin because movement has been turned into a choice. A person may walk for health, stretch because the back aches, lift weights in a room, or set aside time to use the body. But near the beginning of the human story, there was no clean border between movement and survival. The landscape asked for movement, and the body answered because it had to. This does not mean ancient humans were always powerful in the way modern imagination sometimes claims. They became tired. They were injured. They aged. They rested. They depended on tools and groups. But their bodies lived within a wider range of positions and efforts than many modern bodies do. They sat close to the ground. They squatted. They knelt. They rose without chairs. They walked across irregular surfaces. They carried uneven loads. They used their feet not only as platforms, but as sensing parts of the body. They moved slowly when needed, quickly when required, and steadily across distances that made the land part of the skeleton's education. Bones respond to loading. Muscles respond to use. Tendons, joints, balance, and posture are shaped by repeated patterns across life. A body that grows up in varied movement is not the same as a body that grows up mostly supported by chairs, smooth floors, soft shoes, and machines that remove effort. This is not a judgment on modern life. It is a reminder that comfort changes the questions asked of the body. When chairs hold the hips, the legs do less. When shoes flatten and soften contact with the ground, the feet receive a different world. When vehicles carry the body, endurance becomes less necessary for ordinary survival. When work is done at a table or screen, the spine may hold one position longer than it was ever asked to hold across older landscapes. The mismatch can appear as stiffness, weakness, restlessness, or the strange fatigue that comes from too little movement rather than too much. Humans escaped the Ice Age partly by escaping the need to move through harsh ground every day. Roads, houses, transport, tools, and stored food reduced the distances the body had to negotiate, but the body still carries the architecture of a walker and carrier. It still has feet made to feel, hips made to bear, muscles made to rise, and bones that expect some conversation with gravity. The modern floor is flat, but the body comes from uneven earth. The chair is still, but the spine comes from motion. The room is close, but the human line began across distance. The traces of movement are not found only in imagination. They are written, quietly, into bones, tools, footprints, and the places where people once lived. A skeleton does not preserve a complete life, but it can preserve hints of repeated loading, injury, repair, strength, and habit. Footprints do not tell us everything about a person, but they can show bodies moving across real ground, sometimes in groups, sometimes across wet surfaces that hardened into evidence long after the walkers were gone. Stone tools do not show the whole arm that used them, but they show hands returning again and again to force, angle, grip, and precision. Cut marks on bones, hearths, camps, and scattered materials suggest lives organized around movement through landscapes, not around stillness inside rooms. None of this should be exaggerated into a claim that all ancient people had perfect bodies or endless endurance. They were human. They suffered pain, injury, infection, hunger, cold, fatigue, age, and loss. But the world asked their bodies for a kind of daily variety that many modern environments no longer ask. The human body developed in relation to that variety. It had to manage long walking, short bursts of effort, careful handwork, carrying, balancing, resting low to the ground, and rising again. In colder and unstable climates, this variety was not optional. Movement connected people to fuel, food, water, shelter, stone, animals, plants, and other groups. The body was not exercising. It was participating in geography. Near the beginning of the human story, the land itself shaped posture. Uneven ground asked the ankle to adjust. Distance asked the hips and legs to coordinate. Carrying asked the spine to stabilize under changing loads. Low resting postures asked the knees, hips, and feet to fold and unfold. Looking far across open land asked the head, neck, and eyes to work with balance. When people moved through cold wind, heavy clothing, rough ground, or uncertain weather, movement also became a way to produce heat, protect heat, and decide whether the group could continue. This does not mean the human body was made for constant strain. It means it was made for changing demands. Modern stillness can be tiring because it is not true rest in the older sense. Sitting for a long time asks the body to hold a narrow shape. The legs are quiet. The hips remain folded. The spine may lean or stiffen. The feet receive little information. The hands move lightly while the rest of the body waits. A person may feel exhausted at the end of such a day, not because the body has travelled far, but because it has been held in a small pattern too long. The older body expected rest to follow effort, and effort to vary. It expected periods of walking, stopping, crouching, carrying, using tools and sharing tasks. It expected the environment to change underfoot. Archaeology does not need to show every posture to support this wider point. The evidence of mobile foragers, hunting and gathering landscapes, tool transport, seasonal movement, animal processing, and habitation sites all points toward bodies involved with real terrain. Even after the Ice Age, as climates warmed and many groups changed their ways of living, the body's foundation did not immediately become agricultural, urban, seated, or indoor. Those later forms of life were built on an older body already shaped by walking and carrying. The modern body still reflects this inheritance. The curve of the foot, the long legs, the pelvis, the balancing spine, the shoulder able to reach and carry, the hand able to grip and shape, all belong to a creature whose history was written through movement. Culture later reduced some demands and intensified others. Farming asked for repeated labour. Cities asked for different postures. Machines removed much effort. But under every later layer remains the same animal problem. A body that stays healthy through use can suffer when use becomes too narrow. Humans escaped the Ice Age partly by making the world less physically demanding in some ways. They made paths, shelters, storage, tools, vehicles, and eventually machines that carried burdens once carried by muscle. Yet the body still listens to gravity like an old teacher. It still changes when loaded and when unloaded. It still needs movement not as decoration but as part of its design history. The bones and feet of humans do not belong to a species that began in chairs. They belong to a species that crossed ground before it built floors. When flat floors, soft shoes, chairs, and vehicles became ordinary, they did not simply make life easier. They changed the conversation between the body and the world. The older human body had learned through ground that shifted underfoot, through slopes that asked for balance, through stones that made each step slightly different, through weight carried close to the body, through low resting postures, through rising and lowering many times in a day. Modern surroundings often remove these small demands. The floor stays level, the chair receives the hips, the shoe cushions the foot, the vehicle carries the distance. The table raises the work, the screen narrows attention to the eyes and hands while the rest of the body remains still. These changes are not bad in a simple way. They protect joints from some strain, save time, reduce exposure, and allow lives that would have been impossible in older landscapes. But they also ask less of systems that once expected to be used in many ways. A foot that rarely feels uneven ground receives fewer messages. A hip that rarely folds deeply may lose ease in folding. A spine held in one shape for hours may become tired in stillness. Legs that no longer carry the body across distance may feel weak not because they are defective, but because the world no longer calls on them with the same variety. Near the beginning of the human story, the body was educated by necessity. It did not need a special place to move because the whole world was that place. A person might walk to find fuel, bend to gather, squat to work near the ground, kneel by a fire, lift a child, carry food, step over roots, climb toward shelter, or stand watching weather and animals. In Ice Age and other harsh environments, movement was tied to warmth, hunger, safety, and group life. A cold body might move to create heat. A hungry group might move to follow resources. A tired person might rest low to the ground, then rise because the fire needed attention or the group had to continue. The body did not separate posture from survival. Every repeated movement became part of its relationship with the land. Modern comfort has interrupted much of that relationship. A chair can seem like pure rest, but it is also a device that teaches the body to stop using certain ranges of motion. A smooth floor can seem clean and safe, but it reduces the balancing work once done by the feet and ankles. Soft shoes can protect the sole, but they also change the amount and kind of information traveling upward from the ground. Cars, elevators, carts, and machines reduce the need to carry, climb, and walk. The result is not that modern bodies are ruined. That would be too strong. The more careful thought is that many modern bodies live inside environments that no longer ask them to express the full movement inheritance they still carry. The body remains shaped like a walker, carrier, squatter, reacher, and balancer, but it may spend much of the day as a sitter, watcher, and small finger mover. This mismatch returns us to the larger question of escape. Humans escaped many burdens by building tools that took over work from muscle. They escaped some cold by building houses. They escaped some hunger by storing food. They escaped some distance by making roads and vehicles. Yet each escape changed the pressure on the body without instantly changing the body itself. The bones still respond to loading. Muscles still weaken when rarely used. Balance still depends on practice. Feet still belong to a lineage that once read the land step by step. The human body is not only a collection of parts, it is a record of the spaces it was once expected to move through. A modern person can live for years on flat ground, in soft footwear, surrounded by furniture, and still feel a strange relief when walking slowly outdoors, standing under open sky, stretching the hips, touching earth, or moving after long stillness. That relief may not be mysterious. It may be the body returning, briefly, to a kind of conversation it understands. Humans may have left the rougher ground behind, but the architecture of the body still leans toward distance, weight, balance, and motion. The hand is one of the quiet places where the Ice Age still feels close. It is easy to forget this, because modern hands often move through a softened world. They press glass, turn handles, lift light objects, open packages, hold steering wheels, type on keyboards, and touch surfaces made smooth by machines. But the human hand did not begin in a world of smooth surfaces. It began in a world of stone edges, bone, wood, hide, sinew, wet ground, cold water, ash, meat, plant fibers, shells, thorns, and fire-warmed tools. Before the hand became a hand of writing, screens, buttons, and small, precise gestures, it was a hand that had to grip, strike, scrape, twist, carry, tear, shape, and feel. It was not separate from the landscape. It was one of the ways the body entered the landscape. In colder and unstable worlds, the hand mattered deeply because the body alone was not enough. A bare body could feel cold, but a hand could gather fuel. A body could need warmth, but a hand could tend flame. Hunger could rise in the stomach, but hands could cut, break, pound, dig, carry, share, and prepare food. Skin could suffer from wind, but hands could work hides into coverings. The human hand became part of the bridge between vulnerability and survival. Near the beginning of the human path, tools were not decorations of intelligence. They were practical extensions of the body. A sharp flake could open an animal hide or cut meat. A scraper could help process materials. A point could change how distance, risk, and food were approached. A container, where available in later contexts, could change what could be carried. A needle, in much later Ice Age settings, could help clothing fit closer to the body. Each tool changed what the body could do, but each tool also depended on the body that held it. The hand had to learn force and delicacy together. Too much force could break a tool. Too little could fail to cut, pierce, scrape, or shape. The fingers had to feel texture, angle, resistance, sharpness, dampness, and weight. This is why the hand cannot be separated from the larger question of why the body never fully left the Ice Age. The hand shows how survival moved through contact. It touched the hard world directly, then slowly made that world more livable. Archaeological traces often preserve this relationship better than they preserve the softness of ordinary life. Stone tools remain when wood, skin, fibre, and flesh disappear. Cut marks remain on bone. Hearths remain as dark stains or altered earth. Worked materials sometimes survive in special conditions. These fragments do not tell us every gesture. They cannot show the warmth of a hand near fire or the fatigue in fingers after long work, but they reveal repeated patterns of making. Humans returned again and again to materials, not only to think about them, but to transform them through the body. The Ice Age hand was not merely strong, it was attentive. It had to recognize what could break, what could bend, what could burn, what could cut, what could hold heat, what could protect skin, and what could be carried over distance. In modern life, many of these conversations with material have become hidden. Food arrives already cut, clothing arrives already shaped, heat arrives without gathered wood, tools arrive already made. The hand receives results without always passing through the older work. This is a great achievement of culture, but it also changes the hand's daily world. A hand built from a lineage of gripping, shaping, carrying, and sensing may spend much of its life tapping lightly on flat surfaces. The mismatch is not always obvious. It may appear as weak grip, restless fingers, pleasure in holding rough wood, comfort in kneading dough, calm in tending a fire, or satisfaction in repairing something by hand. These small feelings may not be ancient memories, but they belong to an ancient design. Humans escaped cold, hunger, and exposure, partly because the hand made culture physical. It turned knowledge into edges, coverings, warmth, food, and shelter. Yet the hand itself still carries the form of a body that once survived by touching a harder world. A tool is not only an object, it is a change in what the body can ask of the world. A sharp stone edge changes the meaning of hide, meat, wood, and bone. A shaped point changes the distance between hunger and food. A scraper changes the amount of work needed to turn a skin into protection. A needle, in later Ice Age contexts where such tools appear, changes the relationship between clothing and the body itself, allowing coverings to fit more closely, hold warmth better, and move with the person who wears them. These objects may look small in a museum case, quiet under glass, separated from wind, smoke, cold fingers, and the smell of animal fat. But in the older human world, they were not small. They were ways for a vulnerable body to become less vulnerable without becoming a different animal. The body still had thin skin compared with furred creatures. It still needed warmth, food, shelter, and rest. But with tools, the hand could extend the body beyond its original limits. It could cut what teeth could not easily cut. It could shape what fingers alone could not shape. It could pierce, scrape, dig, grind, carry, bind, and repair. This is why tools should not be imagined only as signs of intelligence floating above the body. They were intelligence passing through the hand into material. They were thought made physical under pressure. Near the beginning of the human path, survival was not solved by the brain alone. A memory of where stone could be found had to become a hand-striking stone. A need for warmth had to become gathered fuel, prepared hides, arranged shelter, and tended fire. A need for food had to become tracking, cutting, sharing, cooking, and carrying. The hand joined the mind to the landscape. In Ice Age environments where cold, distance, and uncertainty could press on the body again and again, that joining became essential. A tool could reduce risk, but it could also require long learning. A child watching older hands did not only learn a technique, they learned how the world could be changed carefully enough to keep people alive. The archaeological record preserves this slow education in broken pieces. Stone flakes, cores, blades, scrapers, points, bone tools, hearth remains, and worked materials reveal a species that did not simply endure the environment, but entered into a long conversation with it. A stone tool carries the memory of force. A hearth carries the memory of repeated return. Cut marks on bone carry the memory of hands separating food from a body. These traces are not stories by themselves, but they show a pattern. Humans escaped many limits by building a second body around the first. Fire became an outer stomach and an outer warmth. Clothing became an outer skin. Tools became outer teeth, claws, and fingers. Shelter became an outer boundary against wind and night. Culture became a body outside the body, passed forward through teaching. Yet the first body remained necessary. It still had to grip the tool, feed the fire, walk to the stone, carry the hide, feel the cold, and judge when something was ready. Modern life often gives us the outer body without the original labor. We receive clothing without scraping hide or spinning fiber. We receive cooked food without tending flame. We receive tools already shaped beyond anything ancient hands could have imagined. We receive shelter already engineered, sealed, wired, and warmed. This is a great human triumph, but it can make the hand seem less important than it is. The hand becomes a user of finished things rather than a maker of survival. Still, its older design remains. It is sensitive to pressure, texture, weight, edge, heat, and resistance. It can be calm when shaping clay, cutting wood, kneading dough, repairing cloth, holding a warm cup, or tending a small flame. These acts feel ordinary, but they echo the long role of the hand as the place where the body negotiated with the material world. Humans escaped the Ice Age not because the body became independent of nature, but because the hand helped turn nature into support. The hand made shelter more sheltering, warmth more reliable, food more usable, and memory more durable. Yet the hand itself still belongs to the old body, a body that survived by touching, testing, gripping, shaping, and learning the world through resistance. When the world became smoother, the hand lost some of its older conversations. This did not happen all at once. There was no single day when the hand stopped being an Ice Age hand and became a modern hand. The change came slowly, through many layers of culture. Food was processed before it reached the fingers. Clothing was made by others. Tools became more specialized, then more hidden inside machines. Doors opened with handles. Heat came from systems sealed behind walls. Work moved from stone, wood, hide, soil, and flame toward paper, metal, keys, glass, and screens. The hand still remained clever, sensitive, and useful, but the materials it touched became less resistant. A finger on a screen does not meet the world in the same way a hand meets a stone edge, a wet hide, a bundle of wood, a rough cord, or a tool handle shaped by repeated use. This difference matters because the hand is not only an instrument of action, it is also an instrument of knowing. It learns through pressure, friction, weight, temperature, texture, and resistance. Near the beginning of the human story, the hand learned from a world that pushed back. A stone did not become useful unless the hand understood angle and force. A hide did not become covering unless the hand scraped, pulled, pierced, softened, and repaired. A fire did not remain alive unless hands gathered fuel and placed it carefully. Food did not become easier to eat unless hands cut, broke, carried, shared, and cooked it. In colder landscapes, this work was not separate from survival. The hand could help turn animal skin into warmth, wood into heat, stone into edge, bone into tool, and gathered material into shelter. It was one of the places where the body answered the Ice Age without becoming immune to it. Modern hands may still carry that design while living in a world where many answers are already prepared. We touch clothing, but not the long chain of making it. We touch food, but not the hunt, the gathering, the soil, the animal, the cutting stone, or the fire. We touch tools, but not always the resistance that made tool use such a deep teacher of the body. This can create a subtle emptiness in the hand's daily life. The hand may remain busy, yet not fully used. It may perform thousands of precise motions on smooth surfaces, but rarely grip, twist, carry, scrape, knead, bind, balance, or feel material change under effort. The older hand was not simply stronger, it was more entangled with consequence. A poor grip could mean a lost tool, a dull edge could mean more effort, wet fuel could mean less warmth, a torn covering could mean cold entering the night. The hand's intelligence was practical, quiet, and tied to the body's most basic needs. This is why certain simple actions can still feel strangely grounding. Holding a warm cup with both hands, touching rough bark, kneading bread, stacking wood, repairing cloth, shaping clay, washing by hand, carrying something with weight, or warming fingers near a small flame. These actions are modern and ordinary, but they awaken an older relationship between hand and world. They remind the body that matter is not only something to consume, but something to meet. Humans escaped the harshness of the Ice Age partly by making the world less raw to the touch. Culture softened edges, prepared food, shaped shelter, and moved labour away from the body. This escape was real and important. It reduced pain, exposure, risk, and endless effort. But the hand did not become new simply because the world became smoother. It still belongs to a body that learned survival through contact with difficult materials. It still expects some dialogue with weight, heat, texture, and resistance. The modern world may ask the hand to touch lightly, but the hand comes from a past where touching was a way of thinking, making, protecting, and staying alive. In that quiet mismatch, the Ice Age remains not as snow in the mind, but as an old shape in the fingers. Fear did not disappear when the Ice Age ended. It changed its clothing. In the older human world, fear was not always a sudden panic or a clear enemy with teeth in the dark. Often, it was quieter than that. It could be the feeling of being too far from the group, the unease of a fire burning low, the awareness that cold was entering the shelter, the silence after an unfamiliar sound, the worry of food not returning, the sight of weather changing over open land. A body did not need to see danger directly to become alert. It only needed enough uncertainty for attention to sharpen. This kind of fear was not a weakness. It was part of how the body stayed connected to a world that could change quickly. In cold and unstable landscapes, danger was not located in one place. It could be in distance, darkness, exposure, hunger, injury, isolation, or the simple fact that the group had not yet found a safe place to rest. Modern people often think of ancient fear as fear of predators, and predators certainly mattered in human evolution. Large carnivores were part of many ancient landscapes, and humans had to live with that reality. But a careful story cannot make predators the whole answer. The older human nervous system was not shaped only by animals that might attack. It was shaped by all the conditions that could make a vulnerable body less likely to survive. Cold could be dangerous without being alive. Hunger could weaken without making a sound. Darkness could hide the shape of the land. A lost path could separate a person from warmth, food, and others. A small injury could become serious if movement was still required. Near the beginning of the human story, fear was therefore practical. It was a way of noticing what might become costly before the cost arrived. The body that became alert too late had fewer chances. The body that ignored cold, distance, strange sounds, or group separation did not gain wisdom from calmness. It took risks that the world might not forgive. This does not mean early humans lived in permanent anxiety. They played, slept, cared for children, made tools, shared food, and built meaning in ways we can only partly reconstruct. But their calm existed inside conditions where attention had survival value. Fear and safety were not opposites separated by a wall. They were part of one moving balance. A group could be safe for now, near fire, with food shared and bodies close, while the wider land remained uncertain beyond the edge of light. This balance may help explain why modern fear can feel older than the thing that triggers it. A person today may feel uneasy in a dark room, unsettled by silence, uncomfortable far from familiar people, tense when cold and tired, or anxious when food, shelter, or routine feels uncertain. The actual situation may be far safer than the body's reaction suggests, yet the reaction may come from systems that were never designed to wait for complete proof. They were designed to prepare. In the Ice Age world, preparation often mattered more than explanation. The nervous system did not need a lecture about risk. It needed to shift breathing, muscle tone, hearing, attention, and readiness before the danger became visible. Modern life gives this old system many new objects to attach itself to. Deadlines, messages, finances, health worries, social distance, noise, artificial light, and crowded spaces are not Ice Age threats, but the body may still respond with ancient tools. Vigilance, tension, restless sleep, hunger for comfort, desire for warmth, need for familiar people, and the search for a place that feels protected. This is another way humans escaped the Ice Age without fully leaving it. The landscape changed, but the nervous system still carries the shape of a creature that survived by noticing uncertainty. Fear is no longer always about cold wind outside a shelter or darkness beyond the fire. Sometimes it moves through modern rooms with no visible enemy at all. Yet beneath that modern unease may be an older question the body keeps asking. Is the world around me stable enough to let go? The nervous system is a listener before it is a thinker. Long before a person can name a danger, the body may already have changed its breathing, tightened its muscles, widened its attention, and prepared the hands and feet for movement. This older listening did not begin in cities or bedrooms. It began in open places near water, in forests, on cold plains, around fires, beside shelters, and along paths where human beings had to read the world carefully. In Ice Age environments, the signs that mattered were often small. A sound in the dark might be nothing, or it might require attention. A sudden silence among animals might mean the landscape had changed. Wind might carry scent, cold, smoke, or weather. A shift in clouds might affect travel. A strange footprint, a broken branch, a missing herd, a weak fire, or the absence of familiar voices could all become information. The body did not need certainty before responding. Waiting for certainty could be too late. So the human nervous system became skilled at living in the space between safety and danger, where the world was not yet clearly threatening, but not fully trusted either. This is a difficult inheritance to carry into the modern world, because modern danger is often abstract, delayed, social, or invisible. But the body still owns the older tools. It can still become alert from a sound. It can still feel watched in darkness. It can still tighten when alone in an unfamiliar place. It can still treat cold, hunger, fatigue, or separation as signals that the world is less stable. Near the beginning of the human story, these reactions were not random. They belonged to a life where survival depended on noticing before explaining. A person who sensed a change in the group, in the fire, in the weather, or in the animals nearby was not being irrational. They were participating in a form of attention older than language itself. This does not mean ancient humans were ruled by fear. Their lives also contained skill, rest, care, learning, play, and deep familiarity with their landscapes. But familiarity did not remove vigilance. A known place could still become dangerous under different conditions. A safe camp could become exposed if fuel ran low, if weather turned, if food failed, or if a person became separated from others. The nervous system therefore learned a flexible alertness. Not only a reaction to immediate attack, it watched patterns. It compared what was happening with what should be happening. It felt difference. This may be why some modern unease feels so hard to explain. The body may not be reacting to a clear danger, but to a change in pattern. A room too quiet, a night too bright, a message unanswered, a routine broken, a sense of isolation, a lack of warmth, a hunger that arrives at the wrong time. These are not Ice Age events, yet the body may meet them with an ancient readiness. It uses tension, scanning, shallow sleep, and the search for comfort, because those were among the tools available long before modern reasoning could separate real danger from imagined possibility. Humans escaped the Ice Age by changing the outside world. They built shelters, made clothing, controlled fire, stored food, and eventually created towns, roads, lights, locks, and laws. But the nervous system still carries the older habit of asking whether the world is predictable enough. It does not always ask in words. It asks through the shoulders, the stomach, the jaw, the eyes, the skin, the depth of sleep. It asks through the small pause before entering darkness, the relief of hearing a familiar voice, the comfort of warmth, the unease of being too far from help. In the modern world, we often want fear to be logical. We want it to appear only when danger is real and disappear when danger is gone. But the body was shaped in a world where danger often arrived through uncertainty first, so fear did not vanish when the glaciers withdrew. It became quieter, more inward, and sometimes more difficult to understand. The old landscape is no longer around us in the same way, but the listener inside the body may still be waiting for signs from it. Modern fear often lives in places where ancient fear would not recognize the scenery. It can live under electric light, inside sealed rooms, beside full shelves, behind locked doors, and among people who are not facing cold wind or empty land. Yet the body may still respond with tools older than the modern situation. The jaw tightens. The stomach turns. Sleep becomes shallow. The hands seek something warm. The mind scans for what might go wrong. A person may know clearly that there is no animal outside the shelter, no lost path in the snow, no dying fire, no immediate hunger pressing against the group. Still, the body can behave as if stability has become uncertain. This is not because the body is foolish. It is because the nervous system did not evolve only to understand facts. It evolved to prepare the body before facts were complete. In older landscapes, especially cold and unstable ones, waiting too long could be costly. A small sign could matter because it might be the first edge of a larger change. A sound might be nothing, or it might not. A chill might pass, or it might deepen through the night. Hunger might be temporary, or it might mean the land was beginning to fail. Separation from the group might last a moment, or it might become dangerous. The body learned to treat uncertainty as something real. That older habit did not disappear when modern life changed the objects of worry. Near the beginning of the human story, fear was tied to the body's dependence on the world. The body needed warmth, but warmth could be lost. It needed food, but food could move away or fail with season. It needed sleep, but sleep required trust. It needed the group, but groups could separate, weaken, or disagree. It needed land that could be read, but weather could change the signs. Fear was therefore not only a reaction to a visible threat, it was a readiness shaped by dependence. Modern life still contains dependence, but it often hides it. Warmth depends on systems behind walls. Food depends on long chains of transport and labor. Safety depends on rules, buildings, money, medicine, schedules, messages, and strangers doing their part. When one of these hidden supports feels uncertain, the body may answer with old signals. It may not understand the difference between a broken routine and a broken camp, between social rejection and group separation, between work stress and the old danger of losing security. The scene has changed, but the body still uses tension, vigilance, and comfort-seeking as if it must protect life before it can rest. This is where the Ice Age remains as a deep background, not as a simple explanation for every anxious moment, but as part of the long history that shaped human alertness. Our ancestors did not survive by being calm in every uncertain situation. They survived by balancing calm with readiness. Too much fear could exhaust the body and disturb cooperation. Too little fear could ignore signs that mattered. The nervous system had to live between these extremes. It had to settle near fire, sleep near others, care for children, make tools, and still remain able to wake, listen, move, or respond. Modern people carry that same difficult inheritance into a world filled with new kinds of uncertainty. A message not answered, a room too silent, a future expense, a strange sound at night, a feeling of being alone, or a body that is cold and tired can all awaken readiness without a clear ancient cause. The danger may be symbolic, delayed, social, or imagined, but the body's preparation is physical. Muscles tighten because muscles are what bodies use to act. Hunger rises because energy once mattered in uncertain conditions. Sleep breaks because full surrender once required trust in the surroundings. Warmth comforts because warmth once stood close to survival itself. Humans escaped many of the outer dangers that shaped these reactions. They built roofs, stored food, made laws, created medicine, and filled the night with light. But the nervous system still belongs to a lineage that learned safety slowly, through repeated signs from people, place, heat, food, and time. Modern life can remove the old landscape, yet leave the old listener intact, so fear changes form. It becomes worry, restlessness, unease, tension, sleeplessness, or the search for comfort without a visible enemy. The Ice Age may no longer stand outside the door, but the body may still ask the same quiet question it once asked near the edge of firelight. Is it safe enough to stop watching? The most careful way to speak about deep human history is to begin with what remains, not with what we imagine. The Ice Age did not leave us a complete story written in human words. It left fragments: stone tools, hearths, animal bones, cut marks, footprints, shelters, pigments, broken edges, burned earth, and traces of places where people returned, worked, rested, cooked, or passed through. These fragments are quiet. They do not tell us the name of a person, the sound of a voice, the exact feeling of cold at one fire, or the thoughts of someone looking into a dark valley. But they do give the body a real history. They show that humans did not escape cold, hunger, distance, and darkness through imagination alone. They escaped through repeated contact with material things: stone shaped into edges, fire held in place, animals processed for food and hides, shelters chosen or built, and landscapes remembered across generations. A hearth is not only a mark of burning, it is evidence that warmth, cooking, light, and gathering became centered in a place. A stone flake is not only a broken rock, it is evidence that the hand learned to make sharpness where the body had none. A cut mark on bone is not only a scratch, it is evidence that food passed through tools before it reached the stomach. These traces bring us back to the beginning of the human path, where survival depended on turning a difficult environment into something slightly more livable. The evidence is incomplete, and it must be treated gently. Archaeologists often work with absence as much as presence. Wood rots, skin disappears, clothing rarely survives, voices vanish, ordinary gestures leave no mark. A group may have slept, shared warmth, carried children, repaired coverings, or told stories without leaving clear evidence for those exact acts. Yet the hard materials that do survive point toward a wider pattern. Humans were not passive bodies inside the Ice Age. They were bodies making small islands of control. Fire changed raw food, cold nights, and darkness. Tools changed meat, hide, wood, bone, and plant materials. Shelters changed wind, dampness, and exposure. The group changed vulnerability into cooperation. Each trace is a small sign that the human body survived by surrounding itself with culture. This is important because culture can move faster than biology. A new tool can spread through learning. A better sheltering habit can be taught. A route can be remembered. A fire-making skill can be passed from older hands to younger ones. But the body underneath these skills remains the same vulnerable body that needs heat, calories, rest, protection, and social care. The archaeological record shows the outer answers humans built around inner needs. It shows the fire, but behind the fire is skin that could grow cold. It shows the tool, but behind the tool is a hand without claws or cutting teeth strong enough for every task. It shows animal bones, but behind those bones is hunger, sharing, preparation, and energy. It shows shelters and camps, but behind them is a sleeping body that needed a place to let go. When modern people ask why their bodies may still feel older than their surroundings, these traces help keep the answer honest. We do not need to invent secret memories or claim that every discomfort comes directly from ancient life. The evidence simply shows that human survival was built around problems the body could not solve alone. Cold required fire, clothing, and shelter. Hunger required tools, knowledge, movement, and sharing. Distance required feet, memory, and cooperation. Night required warmth, closeness, and some form of trust. Humans escaped many pressures by building answers outside the body, but those answers were shaped around the body's old limits. In that sense, every hearth, tool, cut bone, and shelter trace is a reminder that the Ice Age was not only endured, it was negotiated. The body did not become free from cold, it learned to hold fire. It did not become free from hunger, it learned to process, cook, carry, and share food. It did not become free from exposure, it learned to make edges between inside and outside. The traces left in the ground do not give us a complete human life, but they show enough to ask the deeper question carefully. If culture helped humans survive faster than biology could change, how much of that older body still sits quietly inside us now? The traces in the ground do not show one simple escape from the Ice Age. They show many small escapes, repeated until they became a way of being human. A hearth did not solve every cold night, but it changed one circle of darkness. A stone blade did not end hunger, but it made one animal body, one plant stem, one piece of hide, or one length of wood more usable. A shelter did not remove weather, but it gave wind a boundary. A path remembered by a group did not make the land safe forever, but it made movement less blind. This is what the archaeological record quietly suggests. Humans survived not because one invention suddenly freed them, but because many layers of adaptation gathered around the body over time. Fire, tools, clothing, food preparation, shelter, cooperation, teaching, and memory worked together. Each layer answered a different weakness. The body was cold, so fire and coverings mattered. The body was hungry, so tools, cooking, tracking, gathering, and sharing mattered. The body was vulnerable in sleep, so place, group, warmth, and fire mattered. The body had to cross distance, so feet, roots, carrying methods, and memory mattered. No single layer was enough by itself. A fire without fuel could fail. A tool without knowledge was only an object. A shelter without group care could still leave someone exposed. Food without sharing could weaken the people who needed help most. The human answer to the Ice Age was therefore not one victory. It was a woven answer, made from body, mind, material, and group life. Near the beginning of the human story, this weaving may have been the real strength of the species. Humans were not the fastest, strongest, warmest, or most naturally armoured animals in the landscapes they entered. They survived by turning vulnerability into cooperation and invention. A weak hand became stronger through a tool. Thin skin became better protected through coverings. A small flame became a shared centre of warmth. Memory became a map across seasons. Children became carriers of learned behaviour long before they could survive alone. The body remained exposed, but culture gathered around it like an outer skin. This matters for the question of why the body never fully left the Ice Age, because culture can protect the body without replacing the pressures that shaped it. The evidence of ancient life does not show bodies becoming independent of cold, hunger, and darkness. It shows bodies building ways to live with them. Even when people had fire, they still needed heat. Even when people had tools, they still needed hands trained by use. Even when people had shelters, they still needed sleep to feel safe enough. The archaeological traces reveal a species managing its limits, not erasing them. A hearth is a sign of control, but also a sign of need. A blade is a sign of skill, but also a sign that the hand alone was not enough. A shelter is a sign of intelligence, but also a sign that the body could not simply lie anywhere and thrive. Modern life continues this pattern on a far larger scale. Heating systems, kitchens, medicine, clothing, transport, lighting, and buildings are powerful outer layers built around old inner needs. The scale has changed so much that the older pattern can disappear from view, but the pattern itself is familiar. The body has a need, culture builds an answer, and the answer makes life easier without making the body a different creature. This is why the Ice Age remains relevant even inside modern comfort. The ancient traces show that the body was never alone, but they also show why it needed help in the first place. Humans escaped through layers. They did not escape by becoming untouched by cold, hunger, exposure, distance, or fear. They escaped by learning how to place fire between skin and cold, tools between hand and material, shelter between sleep and weather, group knowledge between one life and the uncertainty of the land. The Ice Age shaped the questions, and culture built many answers. Yet the questions were asked of the body first, and the body still carries their shape. If the traces in the ground show anything clearly, it is that human escape was never only physical, it was also cultural, and culture moves with a speed the body cannot match. A person can learn a new way to shape stone in one lifetime. A group can remember a better sheltering place from one season to the next. A child can watch older hands tend a fire, cut hide, prepare food, or read animal movement, and carry that knowledge forward long before the bones of the species change in any deep way. This is the quiet gap at the center of the Ice Age question. Human beings could change their surroundings faster than their bodies could change themselves. They could build answers around the body while the body remained old. A fire could be made in a cold world, but the skin still needed warmth. A covering could be sewn or wrapped, but the body still lost heat. A tool could cut, scrape, and pierce, but the hands still had to grip and feel. A shelter could block wind, but sleep still required trust. Culture did not erase biological vulnerability, it organized itself around it. Near the beginning of the human path, this ability may have mattered more than almost any single trait. Humans did not need to wait for thicker fur before entering colder regions. They did not need to grow claws before processing animals. They did not need to become naturally insulated before surviving long nights. They could borrow strength from material, memory, and cooperation. This made the species unusually flexible, but it also meant that the body could remain tied to older pressures, even while life outside the body was changing. The archaeological record helps us see this without inventing certainty. Hearths suggest repeated control of fire in places where warmth, cooking, and gathering mattered. Stone tools suggest learned techniques carried through hands and groups. Animal bones with cut marks suggest food processing, sharing, and the careful use of carcasses. Shelters and habitation traces suggest repeated choices about place. These are not signs of a body that had become free from nature. They are signs of a body that survived by making nature negotiable. Every cultural layer softened a pressure, but each layer also points back to the pressure itself. The tool points back to the limits of teeth and hands. The fire points back to cold, raw food, darkness, and the need to gather. The shelter points back to wind, damp ground, exposure, and vulnerable sleep. The shared camp points back to the fact that a human being alone was rarely enough. This is why the end of the Ice Age could not simply remove the Ice Age from the body. Climate could shift, forests could expand, sea levels could change, animals could move or disappear, humans could follow new resources, settle new places, and eventually build very different ways of life. But the body that entered those changes was still the body of a creature shaped by long uncertainty. It still depended on warmth, energy, movement, sleep, and other people. Culture could rearrange these needs, but it could not make them vanish. In the modern world, this gap has become enormous. The outer layers around the body are now so powerful that they can feel like a second nature. Heating, refrigeration, transport, medicine, artificial light, soft beds, solid walls, and prepared food surround the body from birth. Yet under those layers is still a nervous system that reacts to cold, a metabolism that cares about energy, muscles that respond to use, hands that understand resistance, and sleep that depends on safety. The evidence from ancient ground therefore points toward a careful possibility. Humans escaped the Ice Age first by building culture fast enough to protect a slower body. The body survived because culture moved ahead of it. But because culture moved ahead, the body did not need to become completely new. It carried the old sensitivities forward, covered by better and better answers, until the answers became so ordinary that we forgot the questions they were built to solve. When the colder world began to loosen, it did not loosen everywhere in the same way, and it did not end like a door closing behind the human species. Ice retreated in some regions, temperatures shifted, rainfall patterns changed. Forests expanded into places that had once been more open, coastlines moved as seas rose. Animals changed their ranges, some surviving, some declining, some disappearing from human life. Rivers, wetlands, grasslands, woodlands and shores offered new possibilities but also new uncertainties. To say that the Ice Age ended is true in climate history, but for human beings on the ground, the change would have been lived as many smaller changes across many generations. A child born in one valley did not watch the whole planet warm. A family did not wake one morning and find that the ancient world had become modern. People noticed what mattered near them, where animals moved, where plants returned, where water stood, where storms came, where familiar paths changed, where old knowledge still worked, and where it began to fail. The body entered this changing world with the same old needs. It still needed warmth, food, sleep, movement, protection, and other people. A warmer climate did not make hunger disappear. A greener landscape did not make shelter unnecessary. More stable resources in some places did not instantly remove fear, fatigue, cold nights, injury, or the need for cooperation. The origin of human life remained visible in every practical act. People still had to read land with the body. They still had to walk, carry, gather, hunt, fish, make, share, and remember. The Ice Age may have begun to withdraw from the outer world, but the human body did not withdraw from its old dependence on place. This is why the transition after the Ice Age matters so much. It was not simply a movement from hardship into comfort. It was a movement from one kind of uncertainty into another. Some environments may have become richer. Some groups could use rivers, coasts, lakes, forests, and seasonal resources in new ways. In some regions, people eventually began to stay longer in certain places, return more predictably, store more food, manage plants or animals, and build more durable shelters. These changes were not the same everywhere, and they did not happen all at once. But they opened a new historical direction. The world was becoming more manageable in some places, and human culture responded. Yet the body that responded had been shaped by a longer past. It did not become settled simply because a settlement became possible. It did not become less alert simply because a camp lasted longer. It did not stop valuing energy because food could sometimes be stored. It did not stop needing movement because one place became familiar. A new landscape can change behavior faster than it changes biology. This creates a slow tension at the center of the human story. When ice retreated, humans were not released into a blank world. They carried old habits into new opportunities. A body used to seasonal movement could begin to live near more reliable resources, but it still carried the architecture of a mover. A nervous system shaped by exposure could sleep under better shelter, but it still cared about warmth and safety. A metabolism shaped by uneven food could encounter more predictable supplies, but it still treated energy as precious. Hands shaped by material survival could make more complex tools, containers, nets, houses, and eventually farming equipment, but they remained hands built from the same deep history of grip and touch. The end of the Ice Age did not erase the earlier education of the body. It placed that education inside a changing world. This was not a failure. It was how human life moved forward. Culture adjusted first. Bodies followed slowly, partly, unevenly. The climate warmed, but the body remained cautious around cold. Landscapes changed, but the body still read distance. Food systems developed, but hunger still carried old seriousness. Shelters improved, but sleep still asked for trust. So the escape from the Ice Age was never a simple escape from ancient pressure. It was the beginning of a new experiment, an old body entering a world that was becoming more controllable, while still carrying the lessons of a world that had rarely been controlled. Settled life did not arrive as a simple reward after cold hardship. It emerged slowly, unevenly, and only in some regions where climate, plants, animals, water, soil, and human knowledge came together in ways that made longer stays possible. As the world warmed after the last glacial period, certain landscapes began to offer more predictable resources. Rivers, wetlands, coasts, lakes, forests, and grasslands could support repeated returns. Some groups could gather more from familiar places. Some could store food more effectively. Some began to manage plants, follow seasonal cycles more closely, or live for longer stretches near resources that did not vanish as quickly. Over time, in different parts of the world, these possibilities helped open the path toward agriculture. Villages, more permanent houses, stored grain, animal management, and eventually larger communities. But this was not an instant escape into comfort. It was a new arrangement of pressure. The body that entered early settled life was still a body shaped by movement, hunger, cold, sleep, group care, and uncertainty. It now faced different demands: repeated labor, closer living, changing diets, stored foods, new disease environments, new social rules, and a stronger attachment to one place. The land no longer asked every group to move in the same way, but it did not stop asking for work. A field could feed people, but only after clearing, planting, tending, harvesting, storing, protecting, and waiting. A house could protect against weather, but it also tied people to a location. Stored food could reduce hunger, but it could also create dependence on the success of a season. Near the beginning of this new historical direction, the old body met a new bargain. It gained more predictability in some ways, while losing older flexibility in others. This is why agriculture and settlement should not be treated as a simple victory over the Ice Age. They were powerful cultural answers, but they came with costs and changes. A body once shaped by varied movement might now repeat the same motions for long hours. A diet once drawn from many wild resources might narrow in some places around cultivated staples. A group once spread across land might live closer together, making cooperation easier in some ways and tension or disease transmission easier in others. A child might grow up near stored food and stronger shelter, but also inside denser social life and new kinds of work. The human body did not step into villages as a blank design ready for farming. It carried older systems for storing energy, reacting to hunger, sensing cold, moving across distance, sleeping with social cues, and watching uncertainty. Settlement rearranged these systems. It did not erase them. The house became more stable than a temporary camp, but the body still needed warmth and safety. Grain storage made tomorrow more imaginable, but the body still reacted to shortage. Repeated work in fields changed muscles and bones, but the skeleton still came from a long history of varied terrain. More permanent communities gave children a different world from the one their ancestors had known. Yet each child still arrived with deep mammalian and human needs: touch, warmth, food, sleep, protection, movement, and belonging. Humans escaped some Ice Age pressures by becoming better at staying, storing, and planning. But staying created its own pressures. A place could become home, yet also become a trap if crops failed, water changed, conflict rose, or disease spread. Stored food could calm hunger, yet also require defense. Houses could shelter sleep, yet also concentrate smoke, waste, insects, and infection in ways mobile life did not always do. The new world was not simply easier, it was more controlled, and control always brings new dependencies. This matters for the central question because it shows that the body never had one clean moment of release. It moved from old uncertainty into managed uncertainty. It left some cold exposures, but entered denser shelter. It left some seasonal hunger, but entered dependence on harvests. It left some long movement, but entered repetitive labor. The Ice Age ended in the climate, but the body carried its old survival systems into villages, fields, houses, and storage rooms, where those systems began to meet a different kind of human world. There was no single moment when humans became modern and the ancient body was left behind. The change was slower and stranger than that. Climate shifted. Some people moved into new landscapes. Some stayed longer in familiar places. Some learned to store more food, build stronger shelters, manage plants or animals, and organize life around repeated seasons. Later, villages, fields, roads, markets, and cities would grow from these changes in different parts of the world. But the body did not redesign itself each time. Life became more controlled. It carried older systems forward into every new arrangement. This is the quiet difference between cultural change and biological change. A culture can invent a new way of living within a few generations. A body is slower, it is not frozen, and it can adapt in many ways during a lifetime. But its deeper inheritance comes from far longer pressures. The same body that once crossed uneven ground could later bend over crops. The same hunger systems that once responded to uncertain food could later live beside storage pits and granaries. The same nervous system that once listened beyond firelight could later sleep inside walls. The same hands that once shaped stone, hide, and wood could later make pottery, weave cloth, build houses, and hold tools for farming. Human life changed direction, but it did not begin again. Near the beginning of the human story, survival depended on flexible responses to uncertain conditions. The body learned cold, hunger, distance, effort, darkness, injury, and group dependence before it learned cities, schedules, property lines, and permanent houses. When settled life expanded, those older responses did not become useless all at once. They were pulled into new tasks. Energy storage still mattered, warmth still mattered, movement still mattered, social belonging still mattered, fear still mattered, but the meanings around them changed. Hunger might now be linked to harvest failure rather than a missing herd. Effort might be repeated field labor rather than long-distance foraging. Fear might come from conflict, disease, debt, hierarchy, or crop loss rather than cold exposure alone. Sleep might happen under a roof, yet still be shaped by noise, smoke, illness, crowding, and worry. The old body had entered a new experiment, and the experiment did not always make life easier in every way. This is why it is misleading to tell the human story as a smooth climb from hardship into comfort. Human culture solved many ancient problems, but each solution created a different world for the body to inhabit. Fire made food safer and warmer, but also required fuel and care. Shelter protected from weather, but permanent shelter could concentrate smoke, waste, insects, and disease. Storage protected against hunger, but also tied people to harvests, property, and guarding food. Farming could feed more people, but it often demanded repeated labor and could narrow diets in certain regions. Larger communities could preserve knowledge and cooperation, but they also changed disease exposure and social stress. None of this means the older life was better. It means the new life was not simply the end of pressure. It was pressure reorganized. The Ice Age shaped a body prepared for uncertainty, and after the Ice Age, humans began building environments that tried to manage uncertainty. But management is not erasure. A granary does not erase hunger from the body. A house does not erase exposure from the nervous system. A field does not erase the walking body. A village does not erase the need for trust. A wall does not erase fear. Modern comfort is the distant descendant of this long process. More control, more shelter, more stored energy, more distance from weather, more protection from the raw ground. Yet the body inside this protection is still made from a deeper time. It remains sensitive to cold even when heat is near. It values energy even when food is plentiful. It needs movement even when machines carry distance. It seeks belonging even when walls create privacy. It listens at night even when locks are strong. So the end of the Ice Age was not a clean ending inside us. It was the beginning of a long mismatch between the speed of human invention and the slower memory of the human body. Every modern child begins life in a world that is already prepared. There may be walls, blankets, warm water, clothing, medicine, stored food, electric light, and adults who no longer have to search the landscape each day for every calorie. The child does not know the Ice Age. The child does not know open, cold, unstable shelter, long seasonal movement, or the old dependence on fire. Yet the body of that child is not invented by the modern room. It arrives with needs far older than the room itself. It needs warmth before it understands warmth. It needs touch before it understands people. It needs milk, sleep, protection, rhythm, and closeness before it understands hunger, night, or fear. A newborn does not carry memories of ancient landscapes, but it carries a body shaped by a lineage that survived them. This is one of the quietest ways the Ice Age continues after the Ice Age. It is not passed forward as a picture in the mind. It is passed forward as dependency, sensitivity, growth, and need. The modern world can surround a child with protection, but it cannot make the child arrive as a creature made only for modern life. Near the beginning of the human story, human infants were especially demanding beings. They needed long care, steady warmth, feeding, carrying, and protection through many seasons before they could survive on their own. This long childhood helped make human learning powerful, but it also made survival deeply social. A baby in a cold world was not only a small body, it was a test of the group's ability to hold life through danger. Someone had to carry, someone had to share food, someone had to keep warmth near, someone had to protect sleep. Someone had to know when the child was cold, hungry, sick, or frightened. This dependence did not vanish when climates warmed or when people began living in more settled places. It remained at the center of human life. Even today, long after humans built houses and hospitals, the first language of the body is still warmth, contact, hunger, sound, and safety. A child calms through holding before it calms through explanation. It seeks familiar voices before it understands words. It sleeps more easily when the world around the body feels protected. These are not simply sentimental details. They point back toward a species whose survival was never carried by individuals alone. The Ice Age body was a group body, especially at the beginning of life. Across generations after the ice retreated, children kept being born with this old requirement for care. They entered new landscapes, new diets, new shelters, new social arrangements, and eventually villages, towns, and cities. but they still began as vulnerable bodies needing other bodies. This matters because it shows that the past continues not only through bones and tools, but through development. Each generation teaches the next how to live in the current world, yet each generation begins with an ancient biological opening. A child can be raised under electric light, but the child's sleep still responds to rhythm. A child can be fed from a modern kitchen, but hunger still arrives through old systems of need. A child can be clothed in fabric made by machines, but skin still cares about cold. A child can grow up on smooth floors, but feet and balance still come from a history of ground. The modern environment shapes the body as it grows, but it shapes a body that already has a deep inheritance. Humans escaped the Ice Age across many generations, not by giving birth to completely new bodies, but by placing old bodies into newer and newer forms of protection. The child is where this becomes most visible. Every birth carries the question forward: how does an ancient body learn a new world? How does a nervous system built for closeness learn privacy? How does a body shaped for movement learn chairs? How does a metabolism shaped by uncertainty learn abundance? The Ice Age remains here as a background, not as destiny, but as the older ground from which human need still rises. Across many generations after the coldest worlds loosened, the human body entered new arrangements without losing its old beginning. Populations moved, mixed, separated, grew, declined, adapted locally, and carried different histories through different regions. Some groups remained mobile for long periods. Some returned seasonally to rich places. Some became more settled. Some eventually farmed, herded, fished, traded, built, or lived in dense communities. There was no single human path after the Ice Age. There were many paths shaped by climate, land, plants, animals, water, disease, social ties, and memory. But under this variety, each generation still began in the same quiet way. A body born dependent, warm-blooded, hungry, sleepy, sensitive to touch, and unable to survive alone. This is where the long continuity becomes visible. History can change houses, tools, foods, languages, and ways of working. It can change who lives near whom, how children are raised, what people eat, how far they travel, and how long they expect to live. But it does not instantly remove the deep structure of human need. A child born in a village, a town, or a modern apartment still enters life through a body whose first questions are older than any settlement. Am I warm? Am I fed? Am I held? Am I protected? Is someone near? Near the beginning of the human story, these questions were not private. They belonged to the survival of the group. A child, too cold, too hungry, or too isolated, was not only one fragile life, it was the future of the group placed in a small body. Adults had to solve the same ancient problems again and again: food, warmth, sleep, safety, learning, and belonging. As populations changed after the Ice Age, new pressures appeared. Diets shifted in some places as agriculture spread. Living close to animals and other humans changed disease exposure. More permanent settlements changed sanitation, labor, conflict, cooperation, and social roles. Stored food changed the relationship between hunger and planning. Longer life for some people and different age structures changed how knowledge moved between generations. None of this happened evenly across the world, and none of it should be reduced to one simple story of improvement or decline. But all of it shows that the body was not merely carrying the Ice Age forward unchanged. It was meeting new pressures with old foundations. The body could adapt in some ways. Populations could change over time. Development could respond to food, illness, movement, sunlight, labor, care, and hardship. Yet these changes worked on a body still rooted in older systems. Bones still needed loading. Muscles still responded to use. Sleep still depended on rhythm and safety. Hunger still carried urgency. The nervous system still learned through closeness, danger, comfort, and repetition. Skin still cared about cold. Infants still needed long care. The group still mattered, even when the shape of the group changed from camp to household, village, neighborhood, or society. This is why the escape from the Ice Age was not a clean biological reset. It was a long sequence of generations placing an ancient body into changing human worlds. The body of a farmer was not the body of a machine for farming. It was an older, walking, carrying, sensing body turned toward new labour. The body of a town dweller was not born from streets. It was an older, social and nervous body learning walls, crowds, rules and stored food. The body of a modern person is not born from screens, clocks, chairs and artificial light. It is an older body growing inside them. Each generation receives the world from the previous one, but it receives the body from a much deeper line. That line runs through cold, hunger, movement, darkness, fire, tools, children, and the need for others. Human populations changed after the Ice Age, but the first language of the body remained steady enough to be recognized. Warmth still calms, hunger still commands, touch still teaches safety, movement still shapes strength, sleep still asks for trust, belonging still reaches deeper than thought. The outer forms of life shifted across time, but the body kept beginning from the same ancient ground. Some foundations remain so old that they can be missed because they are too close to us. Warmth is one of them. Touch is one of them. Hunger, sleep, rhythm, movement, and belonging are others. A modern person can live inside systems that seem to replace the older world completely. Heated rooms, packaged food, soft beds, artificial light, sealed walls, medicine, transport, and screens that bring distant voices into the hand. Yet beneath these systems, the body still begins with simple ancient requirements. It still calms when warmth reaches the skin. It still grows uneasy when hunger, cold, isolation, or broken sleep gather together. It still needs movement to keep its structure alive. It still learns safety through repeated signals from people and place. It still carries a nervous system that does not ask only whether danger is visible, but whether the world feels stable enough to release tension. This is not a claim that modern people are trapped in the Ice Age. It is something quieter. The body is not a relic, and it is not a mistake. It is a living inheritance, shaped by many worlds before this one. Ice Age landscapes were only one part of that long inheritance, but they were a powerful part. Cold, hunger, distance, darkness, group dependence, fire, tools, shelter, and the slow work of keeping children alive through uncertain seasons. Across generations, humans found ways to soften those pressures. They did not wait for the body to become perfectly adapted to cold. They made fire. They did not wait for hunger to become harmless. They learned food, tools, storage, sharing, and later farming. They did not wait for the night to become safe. They gathered, watched, sheltered, and built. Culture moved ahead, making a safer world around a body that still carried older sensitivities. That may be why modern comfort sometimes feels both necessary and incomplete. A bed can soften the ground, but sleep still asks for trust. Food can be abundant, but hunger still carries old seriousness. Walls can block the weather, but cold still speaks quickly through the skin. Privacy can be normal, but the body still reaches toward belonging. Chairs can hold us, but the bones and muscles still come from a moving animal. Smooth surfaces can fill the day, but the hands still belong to a lineage that learned through weight, heat, texture, and resistance. The body does not reject the modern world. It depends on it now, in many ways. But dependence is not the same as being remade from the beginning. The deeper lesson may be that human progress has often worked by building protection around vulnerability, not by removing vulnerability itself. This gives the body a different meaning. Its restlessness is not always failure. Its need for warmth is not childish. Its hunger for contact, movement, daylight, darkness, food, and sleep is not merely inconvenience. These are signs of a creature whose history is longer than its buildings. When we feel out of place in comfort, perhaps the body is not asking to return to hardship. Perhaps it is asking us to remember the conditions under which it learned to feel safe. Steady warmth, enough food, real movement, darkness that belongs to night, familiar human presence, and a world that does not change faster than the body can understand. Humans escaped the Ice Age by building shelters against it, carrying fire through it, teaching children beyond it, and eventually surrounding themselves with layers of protection no ancient person could have imagined. But the body inside those layers is still listening with older senses. It still carries the quiet outline of cold ground, uncertain food, shared sleep, long walking, and the fragile circle of warmth that once held people together in the dark. So maybe the deepest question is not whether the Ice Age ended. It did, in the climate, in the land, in the retreat of ice and the rise of new human worlds. The quieter question is what remains when the world outside changes faster than the body inside. Why humans escaped the Ice Age, but their bodies never did.